PS Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球.
After confirming that the family members could be sent away, the Dongfeng Corps quickly reached an agreement on the terms with Pengdiren. Since Pengdiren couldn't offer much now, all conditions had to rely on the future, so Chen Chen unceremoniously priced him according to the future's standard. One is the priority sharing right of equipment. In the future, the Dongfeng Corps will be able to obtain any equipment that the Allied forces can obtain. This is for the future considerations of the Dongfeng Corps. After all, Chasely is a Thai force, and the Jackal cannot stay in Myanmar forever. The Wanfeng group is even more at risk of becoming enemies. One more way out means one more security guarantee. The second is cash. The Prung family actually still has money, but it is temporarily unable to take it out. Chen Chen requires that once this operation is successful and the Prung family's assets begin to be used, a reward of $2 million should be paid to the Dongfeng Corps immediately. The third is the blame agreement, which states that Pengdiren must take responsibility for all the events and consequences that have been caused, and the Dongfeng Corps must never appear in the foreground or in public in any form. Pengdiren agreed to all the three conditions except for paying a small amount of cash and reducing the price to $1.8 million. In order to ensure that the futures could be fulfilled, Pengdiren also revealed to Chen Chen that in addition to Hongyan, there were several other bases for the Allied guerrillas in the mountainous areas near Kokong. Very sincere and sensible. As a result, both sides stopped arguing and immediately began to share information. While looking at the brief map of the old street spread out on the table, Pengdiren introduced, Ming Xuechang has three main locations in Lao Kai. The first is a long-term private room at Henry Hotel, the second is an apartment near the Kokong district government, and the third is a three-story villa near the Lao Kai orphanage. He basically never goes to his own villa. Instead, he lives in Henry Hotel all year round and works in the district government. If it's late, he will just stay in the apartment. On the one hand, this is to create an image of him as a diligent county magistrate, and on the other hand, it is for his own safety. Recently, Ming Xuechang has been seeking to obtain posts in the Border Defense Battalion and the Police Battalion for his two sons. There has been some progress. Although they have not yet received official titles, they have received military power. He currently has a coup army of about 200 to 300 people under his command. They are well equipped with various types of grenades, rocket launchers, and light machine guns. No heavy machine guns? Li Bang interrupted him suddenly. Pengdiren was stunned for a moment and replied, no heavy weapons. Oh, please continue. Li Bang shut up again, but everyone else understood what he meant. Without heavy machine guns, can you still call them well-equipped? With the Type 81 and Type 56 assault rifles, even if they hit someone, it would be hard for them to break through the defense. Pengdiren quickly understood what he meant, so he quickly added, whether they're heavy weapons is not the point. The point is that his three bases are all in Laojia City. He has no soldiers, but the others do. If a fight really breaks out in the city, they can mobilize thousands of people to surround him in a short period of time. No matter how strong you are, you won't be able to escape. After all, the battle you fought against Nakam before is hard to replicate. At this time, Pengdiren had completely figured out the identity of this mercenary group, and he was even more convinced of his previous judgment. Even the tone of voice has a hint of politeness. After all, this might be the thickest thigh he could hug. Indeed, Chen Chen and Shi Dakai nodded at the same time, interrupting the overly radical vision of others and putting the brakes on the team in time. To defeat a larger force with a smaller one in a large-scale operation requires the right time, right place, and right people. We can never do that in Kokong. So, a hard fight won't work. Even if it's a surprise attack like the one at the Regina Hotel, we don't stand a chance. It would be better to kidnap him quietly. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Pengdiren couldn't help but shook his head. If it was feasible, we would have done it ourselves a long time ago. You can see that even though we are in Hongyan, there are still many people in the old street. But the problem is that Ming Xuechang is a very cautious person, and the defenses around him are very tight. It would be extremely difficult to kidnap him. In fact, let alone kidnap him. Even assassination is not feasible. How cautious is he? After he became the county magistrate, he first issued an order to purchase a batch of searchlights, supposedly for air defense. But what can he defend against in this place? Indeed, the white dog said leisurely. He thought to himself that it seemed that the information flow between Kokong and Mungka was not smooth enough. Otherwise, Pengdiren would have heard about the Dongfeng Corps' Dandelion assault operation a long time ago. Well, maybe you have similar experience. Although Pengdiren didn't know what the white dog was referring to, he immediately guessed what the other party meant, so he continued. But this is just one example. In fact, there are many more things that can prove his prudence, such as he never sits by the window, he is almost never exposed outdoors, and his guards are always with him even when he goes to the toilet. In short, the kidnapping route is difficult. We can only find a way to lure him out and catch him in one fell swoop. Is it possible to start with family members? Chen Chen asked. There is a certain chance, but it's not very likely. Ming Xuechang is not a person who is indifferent to family affection, but he will not sacrifice his own life for the lives of his relatives. He could definitely adopt a few more. Ming Jinjin was adopted and is now considered one of the family members. That's going to be very troublesome. Chen Chen frowned, and a series of plans flashed through his mind quickly, but soon, these plans were rejected one by one. It's really difficult to capture someone alive. To be honest, it's better to kill him. If by Suaching, Wei Chaoren, Lu Guishi, and Lu Jingxiang are all killed, only Peng Jiaxing will be left. Whatever he says is the truth. It is impossible for him to throw dirty water on these coup troops by admitting them, right? However, it is easier said than done. In reality, the option of killing them all can only be used as a last resort. After all, when doing a mission, one must not only consider the difficulty, but also the subsequent impact. Everyone in the tent looked at each other, and after a long silence, Chen Chen suddenly had an idea. The reason why Ming Xuechang is so difficult to deal with is mainly because he is a coward who stays in the core-safe area of Old Street and is unwilling to come out. But what if he had a reason to come out? What was going on that he had to participate in? It could only be a rescue. It is not possible to bet small on big gains, but if we think about it in reverse, what about betting big on small gains? Not to save his children, but to save Ong Tingling, the real boss of Kokong, the boss of the Burmese army. His activities are much more publicized, and he has many more opportunities. This kid probably never thought that someone would do something to him. Ong Tingling, the current Secretary General of the Kokong Autonomous Region Leadership Committee, has a close relationship with Lieutenant General Niu Qin, commander of the Larong Mountain Division of the Northeast Military Region. He led all negotiation actions in the 88 incident, helped Niu Qin persuade the 4 major families to surrender, and finally took down Peng Jiaxing at a very small cost. It can be said that this person has an extremely outstanding political mind, but such people often have blind self-confidence. They always feel that they can control everything, eliminate all risks, and solve all problems at a macro level. In fact, this is true most of the time. A simple example is, no matter how much you hate your neighbor, you can't just pick up a gun and kill him, right? It's not that it can't be done, but everyone knows that it cannot be done because the consequences of this action are unbearable for all stakeholders. This is Ong Tingling's current idea. He felt that the incident of Gokong had come to an end, and he had already secured victory. After the celebration party, no revenge could be directed at him anymore. After all, he is the one who truly holds the power. Even if you, Peng Jiaxing, are resentful of Bai Zuoqing, can you vent it on me? Unless you really don't want to be with us anymore and want to completely break off relations. As long as they don't want to fall out, the dogs will eventually wag their tails and beg for mercy in front of their masters, even if they bite each other to the point of being disabled. However, sometimes things are just out of control. He would probably never have thought that there would be a force like the Dongfeng Corps, which did not belong to the Kokong forces at all, and would forcibly interfere in their affairs. He would never have thought that this army didn't care about the power he represented, the complicated game behind all these things, or the possible consequences of taking action against him. Or it should be said that the Dongfeng Corps actually cares. They just think that they can bear the consequences. This situation is actually very unfavorable to Ong Tingling. But he had no idea at all. Sitting on the rostrum in the Kokong Autonomous Region Government Building, he talked with the representatives around him with a cheerful face, exchanging opinions on Kokang's development. These opinions were nothing more than how to make money, how to divide the spoils, how to use the stolen money to buy a higher status, and then make more money. A bright future had spread out before his eyes, and he seemed to be able to see himself walking into the core of power and reaching the pinnacle of life. Looking at Bai Zuoqing, who was sitting next to him, Ong Tingling said, "You guys should use your brains a little more. You can open a casino and a chicken shop. The spending power over there is so strong, and the willingness to spend is so high. As long as this special zone is truly developed, won't the money flow here? There are also some advanced experiences from other places that can be introduced. For example, in Cambodia, I heard that some companies are interested in moving here. If there is an opportunity, you can also go and communicate with them. Don't just focus on the mineral resources, but keep up with the times." Hearing his words, Bai Zuoqing nodded repeatedly. He fully understood what Ong Tingling meant by Cambodia, because even he himself had received all those scam calls offering a large sum of money to have a child. At that time, he thought that this thing could only fool fools. But as the news continued to come in, he was surprised to find that this thing really made so much money. There were too many fools, and there were not enough scammers. If we can turn this into a professional industry, I'm afraid we can make money much faster than drug trafficking. Therefore, even if Ong Tingling did not mention it, he was planning to do this matter. When to start was just a matter of time. So he answered, "Yes, Secretary General, I totally understand. Everyone wants to get rich, but there are too few ways to get rich right now. It's time to come up with something new. But we still need the Secretary General to take care of us. As for the startup capital, we still don't have enough. We still need more." Bai Zuoqing made a gesture of empty grip, and Ong Tingling nodded in understanding and said, "Don't worry, you are in a safe place." Peng Jiaxing made everyone very unhappy before. He was involved in arms and drug trafficking. He said one thing in public, but did another in private. It was only a matter of time before he was replaced. As for you, take advantage of this unstable period and do everything you need to do as quickly as possible. From now on, you can no longer be so carefree. I understand. Bai Zuoqing patted his chest to show his loyalty, while Ming Xuechang, who was standing beside him, bowed his head and smiled. He didn't think there was anything wrong with Bai Zuoqing standing while Ong Tingling was sitting. After all, with his current status, being able to stand was already good enough. The meeting was still going on, and the topic gradually became boring and meaningless. After finally waiting until the meeting was over, Ming Xuechang followed Bai Zuoqing and sent Ong Tingling out the door together. He looked around cautiously, hid his body behind cover, and even took the opportunity of escorting Ong Tingling to the car to use the other person's body to block himself. Bai Zuoqing saw all of this, and his expression changed subtly. After the two of them saw Ong Tingling off, Bai Zuoqing said with a smile, "Xuechang, aren't you being too cautious? Every day, I feel like I'll be assassinated. In the current situation, who do you think will touch you?" "That's hard to say." Ming Xuechang returned to the bunker and quickly answered, "Sir, you and the Secretary General are both safe, because you are in high positions, and it is not convenient for anyone to take action. But I'm just a small fry after all. What if Peng Diren wants to take revenge on me? What we did before cannot be seen in public after all. Now that they have become scapegoats, they must be filled with hatred. Since they can't take off the hat, They might use me as a scapegoat to vent their anger. Sir, haven't you heard? A murder happened in Gongtang a few days ago. The family of one of the 4 guys was rescued, and he killed several people in revenge. I suspect they may have come back and followed Peng Diren again, and are now staring at me with their knives sharpened. You have to be careful. I want to work with you for a few more years. Hearing this, Bai Sawaching shook his head helplessly. It's up to you then. I'm not afraid, and neither is the Secretary General. I don't know what you're afraid of. I just don't believe it. Right under our noses, is it possible that someone could kidnap you? Prevention is better than cure. Ming Xuechang smiled. At this time, Ong Tingling's car had disappeared at the end of the road. Ming Xuechang and Bai Sawaching didn't know that following the disappearance of the car, there was also a prying gaze. The target has left the old street city and is heading southwest. The target may have gone to the vicinity of the Mangdamba artillery range as planned, but the specific destination cannot be determined. The accompanying security force consists of 2 jeeps and 2 wheeled infantry armored vehicles. I don't know the model of the armored vehicle, but it looks very flat and has a machine gun turret on it. The other party chose Route 3. I can't keep up. I'll hand over the channel to the follow-up monitoring personnel. On the radio, Chen Chen and his 4 companions who were lurking near the old street heard the information sent back by Lin He. Based on his information, Chen Chen quickly determined the level of armament of the basic security team used by Ong Tingling. There is nothing much to say about the 2 jeeps. If they want to attack, it can just be done with 1 rocket launcher. The main trouble lies in the armored vehicles. The flat-looking armored vehicle is obviously the MTLB armored transport vehicle widely equipped by the Myanmar army. It may also be an updated model manufactured in Ukraine. This type of vehicle began to be developed in 1959, equipped with the army in 1964, and exported to many countries in the following decades. There are many improved models, but no matter which model, this vehicle has the characteristics of simple structure and reliable protection. It is impossible to penetrate the armor of the vehicle by relying solely on light weapons, and even pre-laid mines are not feasible. If they cannot be eliminated in the first time, the heavy machine gun firepower of the 2 armored vehicles will immediately suppress them. It is difficult to quickly eliminate all the escort teams relying on the strength of only a few people on our side. Although the Burmese army's reaction speed is not fast, as long as they delay for 5 minutes near Kokong. Even if they can complete the goal of kidnapping, the support troops will arrive quickly and hold on to the Dongfeng Corps. At that time, it will become extremely difficult to withdraw quietly. Chen Chen frowned. In this situation, it was almost impossible to launch an ambush on the road, even if he could find Ong Tingling's fixed route through preliminary reconnaissance. While he was thinking carefully, new news came from the last elite mobile observation groups of the Allied forces scattered around Kokong. The target is approaching the Mangdamba artillery range 3 kilometers away. The convoy stopped briefly near Manjio for 2 minutes. It must have been an accident. The target arrived at the Mangdamba artillery camp and entered the barracks. I saw New Chin. You can't get any closer. The target has disappeared. I will continue to monitor. After receiving the feedback, Chen Chen glanced at his watch. Ong Tingling entered the military camp. According to the timing, the convoy took 12 minutes from the time he left Laokai City to the time he returned to the safe zone, a distance of 8 kilometers. This speed is not fast, but it is not slow either. Because whether from the Laokai City or from the Mangdamba military camp, Ong Tingling can quickly mobilize forces, and it only takes 5 minutes at most for these forces to arrive. In other words, if the convoy could not be stopped, Ong Tingling could not be kidnapped, and the evacuation could not be completed within 2 minutes, the Dongfeng Corps would be blocked at both ends, stuck in the suburbs of Kokong, and slowly worn down. The Dongfeng Corps only had 2 minutes left. In these 2 minutes, they have to complete a series of actions including attack, kidnapping, and evacuation. This is almost an impossible task. Chen Chen sighed, put away the walkie-talkie, then stood up and walked out from behind the bunker, disguised as an idle vagrant. More than 10 minutes later, the 6 members of the Dongfeng Corps reunited and walked together towards the temporary stay arranged by Peng Diren in the Laoji city. As they walked, Chen Chen analyzed the situation with others in a low voice. The work meeting in Laokai will last for at least 3 days. That means that during these 3 days, Ong Tingling will have to leave Mangdamba every day and go to the city for meetings. The itinerary is basically fixed, but the route is not. There are too many ways to get from Mangdamba to the city. We can't rely on luck, and we don't have time to adjust in real time. Our only option is to launch an attack near Guojian School, which is the point he must pass by every time. But the problem is that it is too close to Mongdong Dam. Support will come very quickly, possibly in just 3 minutes. With 3 minutes, we can't evacuate at all. The situation is a bit bad. What do you think? Hearing Chen Chen's question, Bao Qi spoke first. The assault is not a big problem. There are 5 vehicles in total. 2 jeeps can be directly suppressed and strafed with heavy machine guns. After forcing them to stop, use 40mm fire to destroy them. Armored vehicles can be penetrated with recoilless rifles. After taking out one, the other can be concentratedly fired at with heavy machine guns and M82A1. This plan is totally unfeasible. Before Bao Qi could finish his words, Shi Dakai interrupted him and said, "We absolutely cannot use vehicles. If we use vehicles, we will definitely not be able to escape. Either we can't get away, or the vehicle can't get away, and it's too much of a loss for us. We can only conduct assaults in the form of lightly armed squads. The only equipment we can carry is rocket launchers, recoilless rifles, light machine guns, and rifles. After completing the assault, we must abandon all equipment because we can't escape by running. We can only disguise ourselves as civilians and hide. The battle plan must be changed. Use the recoilless rifle to take out one armored vehicle, and then use the rocket launcher to focus fire on the other one. This means that we must be as meticulous as possible in equipment resource management. That's right. Chen Chen nodded in agreement. In fact, this was also the plan he had imagined in his mind. It is impossible to expect to escape from the old street, let alone take people with you. The only way out is to hide on the spot and conceal one's identity. But in this case, what should be done with the kidnapped Ong Tingling? Everyone frowned, and everyone discovered the most crucial link in this plan. Several people walked into the urban area of Kokong. This developing city was undergoing massive construction. Looking at the construction site where piling was being carried out, a light bulb suddenly flashed through Chen Chen's mind. He began to speak. There is a misunderstanding here. In fact, we don't need to kidnap Ong Tingling. We don't need to get any information from him, and he basically won't tell us. Our target is still Ming Xuechong. So all we have to do is make the Ong Ting order disappear. As long as he disappears for 2 or 3 days, the pressure from all sides will definitely force Ming Xuechong to step forward and solve the problem. That is to say, there is no need for us to take Ong Tingling away. There's a cemetery near Guojian School. There are many new graves in it. Let's pick a big one, dig it up, and bury him there. You want to kill him? Shidakai asked in surprise. Of course we don't want that. It would be very troublesome if he died. He must not die in our hands. Just bury him, leave a vent, and let him live for 3 days. Chen Chen's plan was implemented smoothly. On the 3rd day after the plan was finalized, with the assistance of the personnel arranged by Peng Diren, they quickly prepared all the necessary conditions. The grave had been dug up, and a new grave was built with cement, even with a door. The grave has been hollowed out. As long as the tomb door is opened, the coffin is uncovered, and the person is placed inside, it will only take a minute or 2 to restore the grave to its original state. In the coffin, water, food, and even emergency oxygen packs were already prepared. These things were enough for Ong Tingling to survive for 3 days. While the Eastern Corps launches the surprise attack, Peng Diren's men will make all preparations, and as soon as the people arrive, they will take over immediately. After they take over, the Dongfeng Corps will immediately evacuate, bypass Gongtang, and head to Hongyan, hide again, and wait for follow-up actions. At that time, Peng Diren will take the initiative to release the news and ask Ming Xuechong to come forward and admit his crime. In order to save the Ong Ting order, Bai Suoqing is very likely to give up Ming Xuechong. Everything was ready, and the group of 6 people except Bao Qi set off immediately. That night, they parked the raiders and warriors in the parking lot designated by the border defense camp, removed all their combat equipment in front of the guards, left Bao Qi to guard them, and walked towards Kokong with confidence. The sentry who had received money from Chen Chen looked at them curiously, and then asked curiously, "Are you not bringing equipment today?" Chen Chen smiled and replied, "We didn't find him, so he's probably not here at all. We'll go to Muse in a couple of days to continue our search. Today we'll go to the city to have some fun, as it's inconvenient to carry a gun. That's normal. Those who do kidnapping don't live in the city. You don't carry guns anymore. Just give me your ID cards back. Otherwise, no problem." Chen Chen decisively took off his ID card and handed it to the sentry, who chuckled and replied, "To be honest, this thing is in great demand, and there are people waiting to use it. With so many people coming, aren't you afraid of something going wrong?" Chen Chen asked subconsciously. Nothing serious will happen. The Burmese army is still stationed nearby, so no one dares to cause trouble. People who enter by getting their ID badges from me will not have any problems. What I'm afraid of is those who enter secretly with guns. But we are checking very strictly. The city is still safe. By the way, are you going to Henry? I have some clay chips here too. I can give you some if you want. Good fellow, this guy actually also does the business of a code jackpotter. Chen Chen shook his head and replied, "Where is the money for gambling? We are here with the company's funds. If we lose all the money, we will be dead when we return." Then you are quite formal. No wonder your equipment is so good. Of course, we have cooperation with many companies, and Wanfeng Group is one of our customers. Otherwise, we would not accept such a task. After just a few words, Chen Chen once again confirmed the identity of his team. The sentry no longer had any doubts and waved his hand to let them leave. Before leaving, Chen Chen pretended to be worried and turned back, took out $200 and stuffed it into the sentry's hand, then said, "Brother, please help keep an eye on it. You know what will happen if someone causes trouble." "Don't worry." The sentry stuffed the money into his pocket and continued, "Nothing will happen here. With me here, everything will be easy." The two smiled at each other, then turned and left. After walking out of the parking lot, Chen Chen immediately went to the vicinity of Guojian School according to the planned schedule to receive the equipment brought by Peng Diren. Although the latter had been forced out of the old street, his remaining forces were still active. With the cover of night, more than a dozen allied soldiers who looked like farmers carried all the equipment they needed to the designated location. 1 recoilless rifle, 2 shells, 4 40 rocket launchers, for firing streams of armor-piercing shells, for Type 81 rifles, and a PKMS machine gun. Of course, there are also the not-so-uncommon second-level bulletproof vests, as well as a bunch of grenades and smoke bombs. The equipment of the Dongfeng Corps has returned to localization. After putting them on, they are actually not much different from the ordinary mercenaries here, except for the night vision goggles that will never be abandoned. Without too much delay, after checking the watch and making the final arrangements, Chen Chen immediately led the team to lurk on both sides of the road west of Guojian School, using the woods and farmland to cover up all traces of everyone. 5 people, 3 on one side and 2 on the other side, with 30 meters between each person. The recoilless rifle had been assembled and positioned among the trees, aimed at the center of the road. All 40 rounds are loaded and can be fired immediately as soon as the opponent slows down. After checking his equipment one last time, Chen Chen let out a long sigh and lay quietly behind a recoilless gun. The one closest to him was Lin He, who was only using an Type 81 rifle. This was Lin He's first time participating in a direct combat operation. Chen Chen didn't have high hopes for him, so he only had one request for him. Remember, you are only responsible for aiming at the bulletproof car that Ong Tingling is riding in. Don't point the gun at your own people. If someone gets off the car, you shoot. If no one gets off, don't worry about anything. Clear. On the radio, Lin He answered simply but calmly. He clenched the gun in his hand, and his expression became a little nervous. Sure, Dakai on the opposite side seemed to notice his actions, so he spoke to comfort him. Lie down and don't move. It's normal to be nervous the first time. But don't worry, an ambush is always easier than a head-on confrontation. The targets on the other side are all in vehicles. Given their quality, they have no chance of getting out and deploying. In 1 minute, we can take them down. Clear. Lin He answered again, and at this moment, the white dog at the front of the ambush team suddenly spoke. Here it comes. Everyone shut up immediately, and in the distance a convoy was approaching quickly. Leading the group is a MTLB, and the rear guard is also a MTLB. Two jeeps of unknown model equipped with heavy machine guns sandwiched the bulletproof Land Cruiser that Ong Tingling was riding in, with the distance between the front and rear vehicles no more than 10 meters. This was a major mistake. They didn't leave the core car any room to maneuver. Once attacked, the front and rear cars would directly block the core car in the middle, unable to move. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that today's operation would most likely succeed. Everyone get ready. Countdown 1 minute. Take my signal. Focus your rocket launcher fire on the number 2 armored vehicle. Use light machine guns and rifles to suppress the jeep. Hand grenades and smoke bombs ready. Don't give them time to react. End the battle within 30 seconds. On the other side, Ong Tingling was sitting in his private car with his eyes closed and resting. Just now, he finished a small-scale conversation with Bai Suocheng, Ming Xiuchang, and others, clarifying the risks that both parties may encounter in the future. According to Ming Xiuchang, the revenge of the Allied forces is likely to revive and continue for some time, and the murder case in Gontang is a clear proof of this. But for Ong Tingling himself, there is no need to worry about such things. He knew very well who the Peng family was. They bully the weak and fear the strong, flatter the superiors and look down on the subordinates. How could they dare to attack me? Taking out their anger on the villagers and junior officers is the only thing they can do. At most, perhaps they would plan an attack on Ming Xiuchang because in the previous conflict, Ming Xiuchang played the role of a swordsman and was the most likely target of revenge. However, their revenge is unlikely to succeed. Thousands of troops are stationed near Kokong, and 2 artillery battalions are ready at any time. The specially transferred rapid response force can reach any location near Laokai within a few minutes. How can they fight back, and what can they use to fight back? Ming Xiuchang's idea is actually just worrying about nothing. Thinking of this, Ong Tingling couldn't help but sigh. He vaguely felt that Ming Xiuchang was a talented person, but he was still far inferior to Bai Suocheng. Maybe it's just a difference in vision? Maybe he can do something in the future, but he can't be asked to do anything too important. With this thought in mind, Ong Tingling shook his head subconsciously. He was really a little tired after the meeting that day. The scenery outside the window kept flashing by. The convoy bypassed the main road with poor road conditions, turned right to the east, and drove onto the small road on the west side. After driving for 2 minutes, it arrived near Guojian School. This school was actually built under the order of Ong Tingling. The purpose was certainly not to strengthen local education, but simply to win people's hearts. This also leads to the school's enrollment rate being low throughout the year, and even the classrooms are not full. But who cares? Looking at the darkened teaching building, Ong Tingling showed a mocking smile on his face. These Kokong people don't really think they have any chance to turn over? Being a mule, a stacker, or even a swindler in the future is your last resort. This thought flashed through Ong Tingling's mind, but before he had time to think about it, he found that the car became bumpy. The road conditions suddenly became extremely bad, and even the Land Cruiser's super suspension was a bit overwhelmed. Amid the violent bumps, Ong Tingling frowned and sat up straight. She looked out the window in confusion and asked the driver in front, "Where is this?" "Near Guojin School." "Sir, I'm sorry, the road condition is a bit bad. I don't know which company it belongs to, but there are rocks all over the road, and no one stopped to clean it up." The driver replied, "Stone, or from the processing plant." "Yes, just past the old selection plant, and behind it is—" "Wait." The driver's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and then he slammed on the brakes. Yes, it's no big deal if some slag or drops on the road near Kokong because it was like this in the past. But at this point in time, it is absolutely impossible because the old selection plant had been shut down for a long time for rectification and only resumed work yesterday. Where did they get so much or to transport? Fuck, back up, Ong Tingling shouted. To be able to reach this position, he is definitely not a mediocre person. His vigilance and quick reaction ability are far beyond ordinary people. There must be a problem. Maybe it was an attack. Turn around. Ong Tingling continued to shout, and the driver had already started to turn the steering wheel, and the other vehicles in the convoy also started moving. But they all made the same mistake. These cars did not keep moving, nor did they make a big circle to turn around, but stopped directly in the middle of the road. Ong Tingling had a bad feeling in his heart, and at this moment, several clusters of fire suddenly appeared on both sides of the road, not far away. Enemy attack. Take cover. The driver stepped on the accelerator, and the Land Cruiser leaped forward as if someone had kicked it in the butt, narrowly avoiding 2 rockets that were coming straight at it. But the problem is, these rockets were not aimed at this Land Cruiser at all. With a loud explosion, The armored vehicle in front of the convoy was already on fire, the turret was blown off, and a huge shock wave swept across the road. Ong Tingling's eardrums were pierced, and he subconsciously fell on his seat, his aging heart beating violently. How could someone dare to do this to me? Don't they know who they are? Don't they know the consequences? He was filled with doubts and anger, but the attackers had no intention of stopping. 2 rockets had already hit the armored vehicle behind him. The high-temperature metal jets of the armor-piercing shells instantly penetrated the thin armor, roasting the people inside into charcoal. Immediately afterwards, an RPG exploded on the ground beside the land cruiser, and the blast wave directly shattered all the bulletproof glass. Ong Tingling fell into a brief dizziness, and he subconsciously wanted to open the door, but he restrained his impulse at the last moment. And then, the next stream of armor-piercing shells hit the front cover of the bulletproof car. At this moment, the bulletproof car that cost millions of dollars to buy was completely useless. Under the attack of 2 consecutive rockets exploding at close range, the power structure of the car was directly scrapped and completely broke down. The only thing that can be called lucky is that the jet armor-piercing projectile is not an explosive and fragmentation projectile after all. The high-temperature metal jet directly penetrated the engine compartment, but did not cause greater damage. Everyone get out of the car. Fight back, fight back. Call for cover, call for cover. Let Chen come and save me. Protect me, protect me. As soon as Ong Tingling finished speaking, the enemies on both sides of the road opened fire. Dense bullets broke through the air and formed a fire net above the convoy. There was no chance to fight back at all. The fierce firepower of PKMS directly suffocated the enemy in a jeep. With the precise bursts of fire from the remaining 3 Type 81 rifles, the 6 men in the other jeep were pinned to the ground by the continuous firepower just as they were about to operate the heavy machine guns. Ong Tingling was completely confused. He could tell that the enemy's firepower was not intensive, with only a few guns at most. But the firepower of these guns was enough to suppress them so much that they couldn't even raise their heads. This alone is enough to prove that the enemies who attack them are no good. Smoke bomb. Throw a smoke bomb. Machine gun suppression. Scatter. Scatter. Ong Tingling shouted wildly, and his shouting did have some effect. Smoke began to spread, obscuring everything around. This gave him a strange sense of security, but soon he fell into deeper despair, because he discovered that these smoke bombs were not thrown by his own people. Almost none of his so-called own people could speak. 4 escort vehicles and 42 people were all suffocated to death in just 30 seconds. Most people didn't have time to get off the bus, and those who did didn't have time to form a formation and fight back. The driver in the front seat had already loaded his gun. After taking a last look at the officer he was protecting, he opened the door and rushed out of the car without hesitation, trying to find a way to allow his personal bodyguards to evacuate with Ong Tingling. But his action was completely in vain, because the moment he got out of the car, his body was accurately pierced by a bullet shot from the smoke. The Ong Ting made his eyes burst. The team that attacked him was incredibly fast, and their tactics were equally advanced. Smoke bombs were thrown one after another, and the convoy was completely blocked by smoke in a very short time. All vision has been blocked, and the inside and outside of the smoke is the boundary between life and death. Ong Tingling drew the pistol from his waist, but just as he was about to load it, a black object suddenly fell in from the open car door. Buzz! Ong Tingling immediately lost consciousness. From beginning to end, he did not see the attacker once. 40 seconds. Countdown 1 minute and 20 seconds. Take off your equipment and retreat. Chen Chen dragged Ong Tingling, who was as unconscious as a dead dog, out of the car, and then shot and killed the guard in the bulletproof vest. Li Bang quickly dropped his gun and bulletproof vest, then carried Ong Tingling on his back and ran briskly towards the cemetery 600 meters away. There, the door of a new tomb has been opened, waiting for its temporary resident. The Secretary General of the Kokong Autonomous Region Leadership Committee, Ong Tingling, has been kidnapped. The Border Defense Battalion is conducting a comprehensive search for the kidnappers. The rebel Peng Diren claimed responsibility for the incident and said he had moved Ong Tingling to a safe area. The rebels put forward negotiation conditions, demanding that the Kokong Autonomous Region send representatives to negotiate and that by Suaching and Ming Shuachong disclose the truth about the police station bombing. Peng Diren assured the Myanmar side that he would never harm Ong Ling. The Kokong side responded, "We are urgently discussing countermeasures." Outside of Kokong, in the barracks in the parking lot, Chen Chen and his companion sat with the paid sentries, watching the news broadcast on the local TV station, shaking their heads and saying, "These people are too bold. They even dare to kidnap Ong Ling? I thought the murderer we were chasing was cruel enough, but I didn't expect them to be even more cruel. But to do something like this, there must be at least a small company of soldiers. How come no one noticed so many people sneaking in?" Hearing this, the sentry couldn't help but reveal a bitter expression on his face. "Don't mention it. Fortunately, they attacked outside the city. If they were inside the city, even 2 kilometers closer, we would all be finished. What did I tell you yesterday? We are not afraid of people like you who come here with formal documents, real purposes, and openly carry guns and equipment. But this kind of thing that comes secretly is really hard to guard against. What do you think we can do? There are so many roads and so many mountains. Can we close every road and burn every tree on every mountain? Peng Diren really deserves to die. If you say his family is not good enough, then it's not good enough. If you leave, then leave. Why do you have to make trouble? Now no one is going to have a good life." At this point, the sentinel paused for a moment, then continued. "But speaking of which, you were lucky yesterday that you didn't bring a gun with you. Otherwise, you would have been arrested and questioned no matter what. Look at that group of people over there. They came here with their boss to deliver the goods. They were going into the city for negotiations yesterday. They brought guns with them, but they were all arrested. Only 2 people are left here to watch over the trucks. Can you come back? Chen Chen asked. They will definitely be able to come back. They're just small fry with only a few broken rifles. They are not suspicious at all. There was a lot of fighting yesterday with cannons and rocket launchers. You don't have these things, do you? We do have them, but they're all in the car. Didn't you check them before? In fact, in order to avoid inspection, Chen Chen had already made arrangements. Most of the equipment was unloaded when he first entered Laojia, reloaded when he left Laojia and headed for Gongtang, and finally left in Hongyan. So what the sentry saw were the 2 rocket launchers that had never been moved and the heavy machine gun that had never been removed from the warrior vehicle. It's a good thing you registered, otherwise it would be a hassle. The sentry's tone was full of hints, and Chen Chen understood and said, we will definitely be fine, but I'd like to trouble you to say a few good words to avoid unnecessary trouble. He took out $1,000 and stuffed it into the sentry's hand, then pretended to be apologetic and said, to be honest, I only brought this much money with me when I came here. It's all for the company. I've spent most of it on buying the pass before. I understand. Don't complain that the pass is too expensive. It's not for me alone. I know. This is for you alone. Chen Chen lowered his voice, and the sentry smiled knowingly and said, you are sensible and know the rules. No wonder you can do such a big business. Don't worry. Peng Diren has already admitted the matter, and it can't be traced back to you. To put it bluntly, apart from them, no one else is capable of doing such a thing. 2 armored vehicles, and more than 40 people were killed by them. Peng Diren was really cruel, and it's a pity. Is Peng Diren very powerful? The white dog at the side interrupted and asked. He's great at fighting, there's no doubt about that. Even though you have good equipment, you may not be able to match them in a real fight. That's right, we fight to make money. How can we risk our lives? They really risk their lives. It is said that Peng Diren also lost a lot of people yesterday. He said so himself. In order to take the bodies away, they even left a lot of equipment behind. The logic loop is closed. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. As a bystander, the sentry's words basically reduced his suspicion to the lowest level. Let Peng Diren take the blame. Next, what he has to think about is how to lure Ming Xuechang out. After a brief chat, Chen Chen said goodbye to the sentry and planned to have a rest. Just when he walked into the plunderer, his cell phone suddenly rang. A completely unfamiliar number. Chen Chen answered the phone suspiciously and said, hello, I am the shipwreck of the Dongfeng Corps. Sunken, you are so brave. A familiar, yet unfamiliar female voice came from the receiver. Chen Chen was stunned for a few seconds, then suddenly came to his senses. What the hell, little fish? Why would she call it this time? It shouldn't be that way. She shouldn't have caught the evidence so quickly. Chen Chen calmed down and asked in a puzzled manner. Xiaoyu, that if you can't hear it, can't you guess it? You've played dumb before. I'm just not sure. Have you figured out the equipment? Or, do you want to ask me about the Ong Ting order? If you want to ask about Ong Ting Ling, I can only say that it has nothing to do with us. Chen Chen took the initiative and directly blocked Xiaoyu's mouth. He was certain that Xiaoyu and Beibian would not be able to obtain the evidence either. This question is definitely just a deliberate attempt to deceive me. But the little fish didn't seem to bite at all. It has nothing to do with you, so why did you go to Kokong? Our intelligence outlets are not vegetarians. You are not in Munka. Do you think I don't know? Xiaoyu's voice sounded a little annoyed, and Chen Chen could tell from her tone that she was indeed extremely anxious. After all, the kidnapping of Ong Tingling can really be said to be an emergency of the same level as the previous 88 incident. We are really here to look for someone. Don't you know the reward offered by Huamei Commercial Bank? $5 million US. It's not just us. Mercenaries from all over northern Myanmar are rushing here one after another, because the kidnappers are likely to be from here. We are just unlucky. Accidents happen wherever we go. Sometimes you should think about your own reasons. It's not you who are unlucky, but the people who have provoked you are unlucky. Xiaoyu on the phone sighed, and after a few seconds of silence, he suddenly said, we have received a report on the situation at the scene of the conflict. Recoilless rifles, bazookas, light machine guns, smoke grenades. The kidnappers were very smart. They set the car on fire and left almost no evidence. But that's the problem. Tell me, how many teams in northern Myanmar can you find that can play this way and use this kind of firepower efficiency? Shipwreck. What on earth do you want to do? You can tell me. I'm telling you straight now. Whether Ong Tingling lives or dies has nothing to do with us. If he dies, there will be others to take his place. It won't affect the overall situation at all, and it won't affect what we want at all. Moreover, you put the blame on the Allied forces, limiting the risk of Kokong Laogai itself falling into chaos. If there is a fight, it will be between the Allied forces and Laogai. This is very good and very stable. But at least we have to be prepared. Do you get me? I see. Chen Chen answered immediately, but then added. But the Ong Ting order is really not in my hands. Dead? But I really don't know. Chen Chen's tone was firm. That it's really not you? Really not. Why would we beat him up for no reason? Our base is not in Kokong. It's obvious that Peng Diren wants to gain political voice. Didn't you see what he said? He wanted Bai Suaching to disclose the truth about the police station bombing. Then forget it. Xiaoyu's tone was somewhat disappointed. But then she spoke again, casually saying, it's obvious that Peng Diren is not coming for Ong Tingling this time. His target is still Bai Suaching's group. The daring things are far from over. Yes. Chen Chen sighed and asked. When will it end? Oh. Xiaoyu chuckled and replied. Who knows? Xiaoyu's call cannot be said to be an inquiry. In fact, it is more of a reminder. She had obviously guessed that it was the Dongfeng Corps that actually took action, because there was really no room for cover-up. Just as she said, there are only a few strong teams in northern Myanmar, and the criterion for distinguishing whether a team is strong or not is not really the so-called firepower. Although everyone is joking that the North has a phobia of insufficient firepower. In fact, the real name of this phobia should be called fear of insufficient firepower efficiency. We have never worried about having too few guns or cannons. What we worry about is that our guns cannot penetrate bulletproof vests and our cannons cannot penetrate armor, and that repeated firing cannot achieve any results. So, the solution is larger caliber individual sniper grenade, heavier firepower individual anti-tank rocket launcher, denser coverage, various types of rocket launchers, higher equivalent. All these things of DF-41 are essentially not for cleaning up the ground, but for the pursuit of one strike, inevitable success. This is the difference between improving firepower efficiency and simply improving firepower. It is precisely because of this characteristic that the Dongfeng Corps' fighting style is exposed so obviously. In this ambush, the tactics used by Chen Chen were so precise and targeted. A recoilless rifle shot took out one armored vehicle, and then a jet of armor-piercing bullet took out another. The light machine gun suppressed one jeep, and the rifle destroyed another. The target vehicle in the middle was suppressed with rockets, restricting its ability to move. Finally, smoke bombs were used to block vision and allow for quick evacuation. No piece of equipment is redundant, and no piece of equipment is wasted. The combat process was so smooth and precise that perhaps the warlords in northern Myanmar could not see any problems, and even thought it was the result of the Allied forces' intensive firepower. But as soon as the report reaches Xiaoyu, the flaw will be immediately revealed. What a joke! The leading armored vehicle only had one armor-piercing bullet piercing it, not even a single bullet hole. Isn't that enough to explain the problem? If it was really the Allied forces, the armor of this vehicle would have been turned into honeycomb briquettes by bullets. Therefore, it cannot be the Allied forces. It must be a stronger and more professional team. Combined with the intelligence, the only team that appeared in Kokong and Lao Kai was the Dongfeng Corps. Who did it? Is there any need to ask more? After figuring this out, Chen Chen was too lazy to play wit with her. With those last few sentences, it seemed like everyone was just joking, but in fact the situation of both parties had been explained clearly. Chen Chen stated Protagonist's real purpose and highlighted the justice of the purpose of this action. It was simply to clear the grievances and clarify the facts, not to maliciously stir up trouble. At the same time, he also hinted that he was involved in this matter. He believed that with Xiaoyu's intelligence capabilities, it would not take long to find out that the 4 people from the Dongfeng Corps were the unlucky ones who survived the previous battle and were accused of intentional killing of prisoners. In this way, even if the Dongfeng Corps' motives cannot be supported, they will certainly be understood. Similarly, Xiaoyu's few words also show her attitude and the attitude of some people she represents. Ong Tingling is not important, Bai Suoqing is not important, and Ming Xuechang is even less important. It doesn't even matter whether this place is messy or not. What's important is that what they don't want to happen doesn't happen again. This gave Chen Chen a lot of room for free play, at least letting him know that he could not be killed by some invisible big hand because of these things. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. The white dog beside him came closer nervously and asked, "Captain, the higher-ups are not very satisfied?" He had been listening since Chen Chen started making the call. It was obvious that he cared more about Xiaoyu's opinion than Chen Chen did. Hearing his words, Shidekai also looked over. Compared to the white dog, he is much calmer, but that doesn't mean he doesn't care at all. He didn't know much about the inside story of the 4 major families. He probably thought that Peng Jiaxing was forced to leave because of their intention. Chen Chen was silent for a few seconds, and after thinking for a moment he said, "There is no satisfaction or dissatisfaction. In this matter, the attitude of the other party is actually very clear. They don't care who gets promoted or who is in power, but they demand that no more contraband be shipped out of Kokong and head north." The Peng family used to be quite obedient, but the problem is that after he banned drugs, he immediately opened a casino and sucked blood in front of some people. So, in this incident, no one came to help the Peng family. What about the 4 major families? Don't the 4 major families also run casinos? Shidekai asked. So, this is the crux of the matter. The rise of the 4 major families was not a result of their control. They were not involved at all. They are happy to see it happen, but they don't want their neighbors' chaos to affect them. As soon as these words were spoken, the white dog's eyes lit up immediately. "Captain, do you mean that we should be the neighbors? That be your head?" Chen Chen had nothing to say to Bai Go. Among all the people, he was probably the one who believed most in Chen Chen's powerful background. And it was obvious that he also believed that Chen Chen would definitely rely on this background to accomplish big things. In a sense, he was right. However, he got the direction wrong. Shidekai rolled his eyes at the white dog and then said, "What are you thinking? How could we possibly do such a thing? Being a mercenary and being a warlord are 2 completely different paths. We have already made our choice. What the team leader meant is that we can use this background and this window period to complete what we want to do. Don't worry too much, or it doesn't matter if you kill him." Then he turned to Chen Chen and asked, "Is that what you mean?" "Yes, we can go a step further and gain some benefit from it." "Like what?" The white dog asked excitedly. "For example, Peng Diren's 2 million, for example, the source of future equipment. Or if he reforms and regains his position, we can take advantage of his benefits. Don't worry about it now. We have to retreat." Chen Chen sighed and continued, "Leave the rest of the things on the old street to Peng Diren. Can you lure Ming Xuechang out to see what he can do? But we have to leave this troubled place as soon as possible and go to Hongyan to get our equipment. At least it's safer there. The information that the Allied forces are in Hongyan is not known to any force other than the Dongfeng Corps yet. The terrain there is complex and easy to defend, but difficult to attack. In theory, it is the best place to rest and wait. In addition, most of the Dongfeng Corps' equipment is still in Hongyan, so they have to get it back no matter what. So, under Chen Chen's arrangement, several people first went to greet the sentry, and then left Lao Kai on the grounds that the situation is too chaotic. Let's go to Muse in advance. The convoy went smoothly, with US dollars leading the way and a smooth journey. It took less than 8 hours for the group to reach Hongyan. Seeing them, Peng Diren, who was in remote command, was very excited. He rushed to the side of the car and bowed his head. Commander Chen, your team is really great. Peng Diren suddenly choked up because he really didn't know how to describe the strength of this team. Yes, in the early stages of this mission, my people helped complete a lot of preparatory work, and it can even be said that they completed a lot of key work. But no matter what, the core of this mission is to fight. No matter how many weapons and equipment you have, no matter how many evacuation routes you have, no matter how well prepared you are, if you can't win, you can't win. 5 people against more than 40 people, and there are 2 armored vehicles on the opposite side? How to fight? Yes, 5 people have rocket launchers and recoilless guns, but the question is, how do you guarantee that the rocket launchers and recoilless guns can hit? Even if they hit, how do you guarantee that other enemies will not counterattack immediately? How do you guarantee that you can completely suppress the opponent? If there is a mistake in just one link, the entire mission will fail, and all the people involved in the mission will be destroyed. But the Dongfeng Corps did it. They made no mistakes and left no chances to the enemy. Moreover, the whole process took less than a minute. When his subordinates reported the news to him, he was completely confused. The gap between people is sometimes even bigger than that between people and dogs. So, it is impossible for him not to be excited, and it is impossible for him not to show his excitement. But compared to him, Chen Chen's expression was much calmer. He was already accustomed to Peng Diren's expression. He had seen it too many times on the jackal's face. It was a desire for treasure. So he just replied calmly, "It's just a very basic tactic. How's your communication with Bai Suoqing and the Burmese side going?" "Nothing much has happened, but that's normal." Peng Diren immediately replied, "It's been less than 24 hours now. They can't just start negotiations. Instead, they should try to search and arrest our people first. Plus, we have issued a security statement on the Ongting order, so I estimate that it will take at least 48 hours before they really start to worry. Don't worry, everything is under control, and we have the right to speak. They won't take risks with the Ongting order. Bai Suoqing will definitely give in. As long as he pushes Ming Xuechang out, our goal will be achieved. No problem, we'll wait 48 hours. Chen Chen nodded slightly, and then continued, "You must put enough pressure on them. I mean, it must be enough to force them to confess. It's not easy. In fact, it's essentially forcing Myanmar to split from Bai Suo. Do you understand what I mean? In fact, the 88 incident was definitely not caused by the 4 major families alone. The real driving force behind it was the northeast military region of Myanmar and the Kokong Autonomous Leading Committee. But now, if Bai Suoqing admits that they were the ones who committed the massacre, it means that they must draw a clear line between their stance and that of the Myanmar side. Because it is impossible for the Myanmar side to admit that it has anything to do with this matter, which is tantamount to indirectly admitting that Peng Jiaxing's departure and the rise of the 4 major families are outright internal conflicts in Kokong and have nothing to do with the cooperation between the 2 sides. The reorganization that has just been achieved will no longer be stable, and the cooperative relationship between the 2 sides will also loosen. The 2 sides will fall into a delicate situation of mutual suspicion and fragile checks and balances. Some people will be very happy with this situation, but Myanmar will definitely not be happy." Hearing Chen Chen's words, Peng Diren nodded without hesitation, and then replied, "I completely understand. My father has already started activities in Thailand. He will use his influence to try to contact more powerful people in Myanmar. If possible, we will turn the coup troops into a group of usurpers who are impatient and have ulterior motives." Very clever idea. Chen Chen couldn't help but sigh. As I said, ZZ is something that not everyone can play with. In fact, Peng Jiaxing had already softened his stance and was ready to accept reorganization in the later stages of negotiations with the Myanmar side. But the problem is that he moved too slowly, the election date was too close, and some people couldn't wait, which ultimately led to this situation. And if Bai Suoqing and his group admitted the truth of the tragedy now, he could naturally stand up and say, "I also want unity, but some people can't wait for peaceful unity and use conspiracy and trickery to provoke war." By then, the Peng family and the old Burmese will meet and laugh off all grudges, and the coup army represented by Bai Suoqing will be completely abandoned. What a good method and a good scheme. Among the people standing together, perhaps only Chen Chen and Peng Diren could truly understand what the 2 sides were talking about. Even Shi Dakai was completely confused. But even though he didn't understand, Shi Dakai still saw the risks. He said, "Captain, Commander Peng, I don't understand what you were talking about, but one thing is clear, Bai Suoqing will definitely take revenge. They definitely won't be able to find Ong Ting Ling, so they will definitely look for you. I want to ask, is Hongyan a safe place? If the enemy launches a large-scale attack, can you stop it and survive?" "No problem at all." Peng Diren patted his chest and said, "First of all, it's hard for them to find us. Second, even if we find it, it doesn't matter. We can go into the jungle and fight guerrilla warfare. They don't have much time. As long as I don't die, everything can still be discussed." "So, sir." However, before Peng Diren could finish his words, a guard in green military uniform suddenly rushed into the tent door. Peng Diren glanced at him with a hint of dissatisfaction, as if blaming him for his recklessness. But soon, when he noticed the anxious look on the guard's face, he realized the seriousness of the problem. "What happens?" Peng Diren asked. "The latest news. Wei Huiran has mobilized the newly reorganized Border Defense Battalion and has arrived at the area near Hongyan. They know we are here, and they are planning to surround and kill us." The coup army was faster and more decisive than Chen Chen expected. Clearly, less than 24 hours had passed, but they had actually directly mobilized the border defense battalion that had just been reorganized, and even accurately found the location of Hongyan. It was obvious that the intelligence they actually had was more than Chen Chen and Peng Diren had expected. It is even possible that they had already known the specific location of the Allied forces before Ong Tingling disappeared, and the reason they did not act immediately was probably because the troops had not yet been fully prepared, but this is also unreasonable. Chen Chen clearly remembered that in his previous life, Hongyan had never been attacked from beginning to end. Could it be that there is still room for the two sides to fight? Putting aside the intention of harboring an enemy for their own benefit, the Wei family and the Peng family are actually relatives, and their relationship is connected through a person named Lin Mingxian from Xiamengla. Lin Mingxian is the son-in-law of Peng Jiaxing, and Lin Qingxiao is the son-in-law of the Wei family. Therefore, if Wei Chaoren, the only person who holds actual military power, does not want to move, others will certainly not make things too difficult or complicated for the Peng family. But no matter what, under the current circumstances, all family ties have been severed. Wei Chaoren had to take action, because the person lost was not someone else, but Ong Tingling, his biggest boss, biggest superior, and biggest financial backer. Chen Chen felt a little regretful. He should have thought of this a long time ago. But the problem is that this relationship is too hidden. Who the hell would have thought that the coup army had the ability to attack the Allied forces long ago, but was suppressed by Wei Chaoren? My initial thought was that Hongyan has existed for so long, which must mean that it is difficult to find and fight here. Wait, I can't think of it. Can Peng Diren not think of it? Chen Chen stared at Peng Diren and asked, "Don't tell me that you have no prediction of what is happening now." This question is very sharp. If Peng Diren admitted that he had been prepared for this, then he was plotting against the Dongfeng Corps and intended to drag it into the water. And if he says not prepared, it shows his incompetence. After all, the information he possessed was much more complete than that of the Dongfeng Corps. However, Peng Diren's answer was flawless. I was prepared, but I didn't expect them to directly attack the border defense camp. I thought they would at most send out some of their own armed forces. In that case, we would have plenty of room to maneuver. I misjudged Myanmar's cooperative relationship with them. I thought their relationship would be more fragile. After arresting Ong Tingling, do you still think their relationship will be fragile? Even if it was fragile before, it won't be fragile now. Chen Chen's tone was a little angry, but Peng Diren immediately gave him an explanation. Kokong is not ruled by Ong Tingling alone. Su Minwu is also able to control him. I just misjudged the relationship between Ong Tingling and Su Minwu. A perfectly reasonable explanation. Chen Chen had nothing else to say, so he could only say, "We can't control it anymore. We have to withdraw now. Transfer the money to the account I gave you, and contact your connections right now. Right now." "No problem." Peng Diren answered without hesitation, and then continued, "I will add another 2 million. Can you join the war? Even 20 million is not enough." Chen Chen refused without hesitation, stared at Peng Diren, and made a phone call to instruct him to transfer the money. Then he waved his hand and immediately began to evacuate with all the people in the Dongfeng Corps. The situation has not gotten out of control yet, but it is definitely beyond his expectations. There is no point in getting involved any further. The best option is to retreat at the right time and look for another opportunity when the time is right. The raider and warrior vehicles set off and drove all the way to the valley connecting Hongyan and Chanko. But just as they were about to escape the big encirclement of Hongyan through this only passage, a series of conversations suddenly came from the listening station in Bao Chi's hand. Arrived near Chanko and prepared to assemble. It's blocked, but no enemy has been found yet. The reconnaissance team has arrived and surrounded us. Damn. For the first time, beads of sweat appeared on Chen Chen's forehead. Judging from the content of the conversation, the border defense battalion mobilized by Wei Chaoren actually completed the encirclement of Hongyan. This is a long and narrow basin with an area of more than 5 square kilometers. Can't run away. The enemies are indeed not fools. Even if they are useless armed forces like the 4 major families, their leaders cannot be really useless. Wei Chaoren's reaction was incredibly fast. According to the estimated time, they left Laojie at most 1 hour behind the Dongfeng Corps. After realizing that there was no way to resolve the issue quickly through negotiation, they made the extremely firm decision to use force. Can't find the Ong Ting order? No problem. I can find you, Peng Diren, right? As long as I catch you. Why would I worry about not finding the Ong Ting order? If you have the guts, then you can gamble with your life and fight me to the end. Captain, what should we do? The white dog asked a little nervously. This is the first time he has been surrounded. In the past, he was always the one who surrounded others, okay? Chen Chen shook his head. He really had no good way to deal with this sudden encirclement. After hesitating for a few seconds, he replied, "Retreat first. It's impossible for our 2 vehicles to break through. The Burmese Border Defense Battalion is not the armed battalion of Chen Chen and the ethnic armed groups. They have artillery, armored vehicles, and heavy weapons. If it doesn't work, we'll abandon the car. What a pity for my plunderer. Damn it, Peng Diren." Chen Chen cursed fiercely, and then the convoy immediately turned around and returned to the Hongyan base. At this time, the base was filled with a solemn atmosphere. The less than 100 people left all picked up their guns, ready for the impending attack. They had nowhere to run because Wei Huiran's border defense camp had already been deployed. Seeing Chen Chen coming back, Peng Diren showed an excited smile on his face, but Chen Chen didn't give him a good look at all. Instead, he said directly, "From now on, everyone here is under my command. Our goal is just to break through with as many people as possible. All the baggage can be abandoned. You have to compensate me for my car. This car is worth $3.6 million. In addition, you will need to pay an additional amount of money as our commission. Is that clear?" "Clear." Peng Diren nodded without hesitation, and Chen Chen immediately walked into the command room and began to study the map. He doesn't have much time left. Within an hour at most, the Border Defense Battalion will launch an attack. Within this hour, he must come up with a complete breakout plan. Looking at Chen Chen with a frown on his face, Ga Yaozi suddenly sighed and said, "Captain, why do I feel that the current situation is similar to the time when we fought Nuakong before? It's just that now we are the ones who are surrounded. How much worse can it be? We are truly surrounded, and Nuakong can run away at any time. Besides, at that time we had more than 200 people surrounding more than 1,000 people, but now more than 1,000 people are surrounding more than 100 of us. It doesn't feel much different." The white dog nodded thoughtfully and continued, "If you don't need a car, it should be easy to escape, right? It's easy as hell." Chen Chen shook his head and explained, "The current Border Defense Battalion has not yet been fully reorganized. Most of the soldiers are active soldiers from Myanmar's mountain troops. Their quality is much better than those rotten fish and shrimp. What should we do then?" Ga Yaozi finally began to get a little nervous. He realized that the current situation was making this leader, who always thought he was all-powerful, start to get a little angry. "What else can I do?" Chen Chen's hand moved across the map, pointing out a tortuous route. "If you are successful, you should use firepower to cover the enemy. If you are in trouble, you should use tactical penetration. I just don't believe that the defense line set up by this border defense camp can be flawless." Chen Chen was extremely glad that he brought the listening station with him. The existence of this thing could be said to have torn a crack in the situation where he was doomed to die. Although the signal was poor and not much useful information was monitored, he was still able to roughly determine the movements of the border defense camp through fragmented conversations. Among these trends, he also identified several key pieces of information. First, the other side has 107 rocket launchers, and there are quite a few of them. Second, the enemy had about 1,200 people, divided into 12 combat formations. Third, Hongyan has been completely besieged, and the only road leading to the outside world has been blocked. There is really no other choice now. I can only give it a try. After much deliberation, he finally decided on a plan of action and quickly issued an order. "Everyone hold your ground. We must create the illusion that we are still at Red Rock Base. We will trick them into launching a large-scale rocket bombardment and use the bombardment as cover to evacuate. Throw all the smoke bombs. Don't leave any behind. We need to block all sites and ensure the safety of the breakout. The evacuation route will be along Afong Mountain, and we will use the mountain ridge as a boundary to penetrate the enemy, maximizing the enemy's physical strength while also disrupting their deployment. We have to fight all the way through, Boss Peng. Divide your people into 10 teams. Give each team a number and equip them with walkie-talkies. I will give orders according to the number. Boss Peng, you need to make it clear to all your men that they can only survive if they obey orders. If they run blindly and are caught by the Border Defense Battalion, they will be 100% dead." "I see." Peng Diren nodded immediately. He was extremely glad that he had listened to Chen Chen's advice and kept on tingling in Kokong instead of keeping him with him. "If that happens, I really won't have any bargaining chips in my hand." Now, at least he was free of any burden, and all he had to do was focus on how to escape and survive. However, although he spoke firmly, Peng Diren did not have much confidence in his men. Most of these people are elites, and the fact that they can follow us here proves their loyalty. But loyalty has its limits, and even the elite can become discouraged. After a wave of bombing, how many people will be left to hold their positions, and how many will be left to obey orders? Thinking of this, Peng Diren spoke decisively. "Commander Chen, I have to make it clear to you in advance. Although these people obey my orders, they are not." "I know what you mean." Chen Chen immediately interrupted him and continued, "I will take unexpected situations into consideration." In fact, he knew the fighting qualities of these militias very well. After all, he had experienced them personally in his memories of this life. Therefore, he did not place any hope on these so-called elites. Just like the first battle he fought when he traveled through time, these people were nothing more than cannon fodder and consumables. Whether they run or fight, they can attract some of the attention of the border defense camp. Even the slightest diversion of attention can create an opportunity for one's true core team to escape. After a brief discussion, the breakout plan was completely finalized, and Chen Chen decisively gave the order. "Everyone, start taking your battle positions and follow my instructions. Number 1, prepare the Marauder and start moving. We will use this vehicle as a mobile shelter to avoid rocket explosions. Distribute all the smoke bombs. Once I give the order, start throwing them immediately. Number 2, pay attention to the information and report your movements to me at any time. Number 3, carry your M82 and look for high-value targets to take down if you have the chance. Number 5, get ready and observe the jungle terrain. You will lead the breakout. Number 6, cover me. No matter what happens, you must stay close to me and ensure my safety. Our combat formation and tactics will be based on the 6-man team model from training." "Clear." Everyone answered at the same time, but Peng Diren stood there in a daze. He fully understood Chen Chen's arrangement, but he could not imagine that their tactics had been refined to this extent. Can such a tactic really be implemented? Sure enough, this is the gap. At the same time, on the ridge, Wei Huiren stood in front of the rocket position that had been set up, observing the situation in the Hongyan base at the foot of the mountain in the distance with a telescope. He could see that in that small basin, all the armed men had already taken up their designated combat positions. He could also see a faint figure passing by the door of a tent in the middle, which was obviously a command post. That was Peng Diren, his opponent on this trip. The enemy's battle positions were concentrated, they only had light weapons, and their total number of people was only about 100 people. It can be said that the situation was very good. The only bad thing was that he did not see Yong tingling. If we follow a standard rescue plan, since we don't see the rescue target, we must not kill the kidnappers. After all, if you kill the kidnappers, how will you know where to rescue them? First, negotiate, confirm the location of the rescue target, confirm the target's safety, and then develop a complete plan. This is how a rescue operation should be carried out. But unfortunately, such a rescue is destined not to happen, because someone doesn't want Ong Tingling to live. This is a covert deal involving Kokong, a company that is about to prosper and has unlimited profits. Suo Minwu wanted Ong Tingling to die, but he had no better reason and could only maintain the status quo. But these allied forces just happened to bring the reasons to them. It's reasonable to accidentally cause the death of a hostage during a rescue mission, right? Or in other words, no hostages were found during the rescue mission and no kidnappers were left alive. This is more reasonable, right? No one can say that it is not true, not even the Burmese side or the Bai family. As long as he completes this task and helps Suo Minwu take the position, then his position and that of the Bai family can be switched. After all, he was the real warlord, and they were just a group of businessmen. Thinking of this, Wei Huiran felt extremely happy. He put down the telescope in his hand and asked the adjutant beside him, "Are the troops ready?" The adjutant nodded immediately and replied, "All combat units are ready and can launch an attack at any time. The encirclement has been formed. We have guarded all the passages and arranged sentries in the jungle. As long as a fight breaks out at one point, the surrounding teams can immediately provide support. The support team can arrive at the scene within 1 minute. There's no way they can get away. At most, it will just take a little longer." Hearing the adjutant's words, Wei Huiran breathed a sigh of relief, and then he gave the order. "Then let's get started. Mortars ready to fire, rockets fired. Don't give them any chance, blow them all up." At the foot of the mountain, inside the Hongyan base, Chen Chen sat in the passenger seat of the Predator and shouted, "Prepare for the bombardment. Execute according to the predetermined battle plan." Following his order, clusters of fire suddenly lit up on the distant hilltops, and then a rain of fire rose up into the sky, covering the entire sky. This scene is exactly the same as the Battle of Xiaoshianyuan village when we fought against Nuakong. The only difference is that at that time he was standing on the top of the mountain, but now he is standing at the foot of the mountain. All the allied forces have been mobilized. This is only the initial stage of the battle. The morale of the team has not been hit yet, and the orders are executed quickly. In just a few seconds, dozens of smoke bombs were thrown, and the entire position was covered in smoke. And then, everyone began to disperse and retreat, running towards the edge of the basin. The first batch of falling rockets exploded behind them, flames shot up into the sky, and amid the violent explosions, the entire Hongyan base had turned into a sea of fire. The scene was extremely horrifying. Since traveling through time, Chen Chen once again felt that uncontrollable fear. He held the 416 Hong Kong dollars tightly in his hand, while Li Xiong beside him struggled to hold the steering wheel tightly and stepped on the accelerator. Without any hesitation, the Predator rushed out swiftly and began to circle around the Hongyan base. He didn't want to use this vehicle to launch any possible counterattack. In fact, the vehicle's current mission was to use its heavy armor to block the first wave of rocket explosions and to ensure the safety of the Dongfeng Corps and Pengdiren to the greatest extent. Rockets continued to fall, and with the help of the Marauders' protection and mobility, the 7-man team had successfully passed through the minefield and rushed to the foot of the mountain on the northernmost side of the Hongyan base. On the hillside, a light machine gun was firing at them, but because they were using a light machine gun, the bullets had almost no chance of penetrating the Marauder's body. Through the designed opening on the side, Chen Chen locked onto the enemy's position on the hillside. His heart beat violently for a few times, then suddenly slowed down, and his whole body movements became steady. Through the lens of the small conch, Chen Chen found the enemy lying on the ground and shooting with a PKM. He pulled the trigger without any hesitation, and at the same time, Shurdakai's M82A1 also sounded synchronously. After gaining enlightenment on the battlefield of Naong village, his marksmanship has improved visibly. After his gun fired, the enemy who was operating the mortar on the hillside was cut off in half, and the bullet even went through his body and continued to hit another enemy who was delivering the shells. Blood was flowing, and Chen Chen's 416 Hong Kong dollars also hit the target. In this direction, the originally continuous firepower immediately had a gap. Chen Chen did not hesitate, but shouted into the intercom, "Everyone gather to me. There is a loophole in the opponent's defense line. Break through the defenses and enter the jungle." After he finished speaking, he no longer listened to other people's responses, but opened the door and got out of the car and knocked down another enemy with a few bursts of shots. Then he thrust his gun forward, and relying on his precise shooting skills, he suppressed a team of more than a dozen people on the hillside. Number 1, pitch a grenade. At this time, they were still more than 60 meters away from the enemy on the top of the mountain, and it was a low-level attack. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Li Bang to throw the grenade near the enemy. But sometimes some people are so unreasonable. The first RNG grenade flew out and landed accurately on the border defense camp's position in less than 2 seconds. Accompanied by a loud explosion, the soldiers of the border defense camp subconsciously scattered, exposing the biggest weakness of this vulnerable direction. It's too thin. He was so thin that he had no chance of lasting more than 20 seconds under Li Bongjin's subsequent grenade bombardment. The opportunity for war was imminent, and Chen gave the order again. Everyone go up the mountain and occupy the enemy's position. Groups 9 and 10, pick up the machine guns on the battlefield and help us set up an evacuation firing point. Don't worry, we'll use a central stripping tactic. Once we reach a safe area, we'll turn around and cover you to ensure everyone evacuates as safely as possible. Clear. A reply came from the radio, and Chen Chen waved his hand without hesitation, making a charging gesture towards the others around him. At this moment, the results of the Dongfeng Corps' long-term training were clearly revealed. Chen Chen hardly needed to do much command and dispatch. Everyone consciously formed a warning circle and surrounded Peng Diren. With the support of heavy bulletproof vests, the Dongfeng Corps didn't care about the enemy's bullets at all. Li Bang rushed to the front and blocked the enemy's shooting range with his body. Chen Chen, who followed closely behind, used his cover without hesitation. In just 20 seconds, with the help of the chaos created by Li Gang, he could almost be said to have shot down more than half of the enemies on the position one by one. However, this was not the end. Chen Chen saw that enemies from other locations on the hill had begun to rush over quickly, trying to fill the space vacated by the fallen squad. Time is very tight, so tight that we have to race against time. If Chen Chen's side could arrive before the local support troops, they would be able to smoothly take over the commanding hilltop and then set up a blocking point there, buying time for the truly important Peng Diren. 1 minute. They only have 1 minute. With less than 200 meters to the ridge, Chen Chen quickened his pace and charged forward with Lin He. The latter was too busy explaining or popularizing science. He just rushed upwards, while the others followed closely on his route. The team was very fast. In less than 30 seconds, they had reached the outskirts of the enemy position. Li Bang was still the leader. He held a spray gun, which was the most useful weapon in trench warfare. He pulled the trigger, and the shotgun consisting of 50 steel balls quickly took effect. Those who were still moving on the ground were shot again. And if anyone dared to move around in this war zone without blinking, he would only be shot down. Everyone started throwing grenades. Chen Chen took a deep breath and followed Lin He and Li Bang to the top of the mountain. The ground was littered with corpses. Some were killed in explosions, some were pierced by bullets, and some were simply pretending to be dead. Chen Chen did not give them any chance. With the 416 Hong Kong dollars in his hand, he shot every person who fell to the ground. 50 seconds later, the team arrived at the bunker on the top of the mountain. The PKMS was immediately set up, and under the powerful firepower, the support team quickly suppressed the reinforcements. Number 1. Hold on for 2 minutes. We have to retreat first. You organize the other personnel to join us. We will go to AI Fong's location. We must make sure to hold him off for at least 2 minutes, and then evacuate with the other team members. Clear. Li Bang answered immediately, while Chen Chen left without any hesitation. The jungle was right in front of him, but Chen Chen didn't dare to relax at all. It was not until the team killed a few more people and looked back to see the other allied forces running towards them, as well as Li Bang standing beside them, that Chen Chen realized that this line of defense had been broken through by his side. That's good. It's easier than you think. If this is the case, the difficulty of subsequent breakout and escape will be much reduced. Go. Everyone start retreating into the woods. Clear. The answer came from the headset again, and Chen Chen vaguely felt a sense of high spirits. Damn, the guerrilla bloodline has awakened. What he didn't know was that his opponent had gone completely crazy. In the bulletproof car in the distance, the elite of the Prung family had all gathered, and after receiving the news that the defense line had been breached, Wei Huairan also shouted angrily and issued orders. Everyone follow. Our enemy is trying to run. Keep them. Don't let anyone leave. Remember, kill them all. We don't need evidence. We want to get rid of them as quickly as possible. We take them all, dead or alive. Breaking through the first line of defense definitely does not mean that the Allied forces have escaped from the predicament. In fact, let alone escaping from the predicament, even their temporary safety is not guaranteed. But no matter what, this unit has achieved the most crucial victory. That is, it took the initiative and demonstrated its momentum before the battle began. After crossing the ridge, Li Bang delayed the enemy reinforcements for 2 minutes as planned and helped all the troops to reunite. Afterwards, under the deterrence of several smoke bombs and Sure Dake's anti-material sniper rifle, the firepower point responsible for covering was successfully evacuated. They left behind 2 bodies, both Confederate soldiers without body armor. Together with other soldiers killed in the bombing, the team's number of men had been reduced from the original 102 to 95. The reduction in staff exceeded 5%. However, since the base number was already large, this did not have much impact on morale. On the contrary, everyone was excited, because this was the first time they launched such a vigorous attack. Although most of the damage was not done by myself, it feels different when following a master. The team was whispering and communicating excitedly, but Chen Chen did not relax at all. He arranged for Bai Go to look after Bao Qi, whose leg had not yet fully recovered, and then gave the order. Keep up the speed. All lights are turned off, and each group must follow their leader closely. The team leader contacted via radio and kept an eye on the flashing signal I sent. I will flash every 10 seconds, keep moving in my direction. Number 5, go forward and explore the way. Clear the best route. Number 1, you continue to lead teams 9 and 10 to provide cover. Use smoke bombs to evacuate when necessary. How many smoke bombs do you have left? I still have 6 rounds left. The whole team should have about .30 rounds left. That's enough. Chen Chen answered decisively, then reached out and took off the night vision goggles on his head. At this time, it was already 7 o'clock in the evening. Although the sun had not yet completely set, the light had become extremely dim in a dense forest environment. Such an environment is not good for the enemy, but it is also equally unfavorable for the Allied forces whose equipment is extremely backward. We must leave the dense forest as soon as possible and move forward to the north side of the Afong mountain ridge. That is the real battlefield of interspersed operations because there is a river there, Nujiang River, or the Salween River. In this section of the river, the Salween River has a slow-flowing area that is more than 10 kilometers long. The height difference from north to south is less than 10 meters, which provides excellent conditions for crossing the river. It is an absolutely irreplaceable natural obstacle. As long as the Allied forces could reach the vicinity of the Salween River before the Border Defense Battalion completed the encirclement, they could quickly cross the river and rely on the river to block the enemy. At that time, whether to fight a retreating blocking war or to take advantage of the darkness to continue to infiltrate, it is up to the Allied forces to decide. The plan is perfect, but the execution is not perfect. Although this Allied army is known to be elite, in reality, their quality can only barely match that of the Burmese Army's Mountain Brigade. If they were placed in the north, they would be the kind of people that even the kitchen squad could beat with one hand. Therefore, the team began to fall behind after walking only a few hundred meters in the jungle. When the three groups that were originally closest to the vanguard led by Lin, he inexplicably fell behind. Chen Chen was not surprised at all. He just ordered to keep moving forward, but at this moment, intensive gunfire suddenly rang out. Number 1, report the situation. Number 2, keep looking for the intercept signal. 2 short commands were issued, and then Li Bang's reply came immediately through the headset. Number 4, Group 3 broke away and engaged the enemy. They were bitten by at least 100 enemies and are retreating. I was going to run the screen, but don't take cover. Chen Chen immediately interrupted him and said, Group 3 will evacuate on their own, and the other groups will quickly distance themselves from Group 3. Look at my signal and adjust your route to the northwest. There was no way Chen Chen would let Li Bang and Shirdekai take risks for a group that couldn't even understand the command and could fall behind during the march. In fact, he himself had anticipated this situation a long time ago. There will definitely be people who fall behind, and there will definitely be people who cannot keep up with the pace. But who says that such mistakes of theirs are not opportunities? Keep a distance from them, and they will be the best sniper team. After all, we don't have a clear target point. We just need to reach the river. Clear. Li Bang responded quickly, and the team continued to move forward. Just when the team began to waver a little at Chen Chen's cold-blooded plan, Lin He, who was exploring the way ahead, suddenly sent back a message. Enemy spotted. Number at least 100. It's about 200 meters away from me and 300 meters away from the main force. The enemy is moving in my direction. Expect to meet in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. This is the time required to reach combat distance. But in fact, the noise created by the actions of a large force in the jungle can be heard by the enemy 100 meters away. This means that the Allied forces have a maximum of 6 minutes to make a decision. Should we fight or go around? There are only 100 of us, so we can still defeat them. But if the time drags on too long, the pursuers behind will come. The less than 100 people under his command are not members of the Dongfeng Corps. Given their quality, is it really possible to end the battle in a short time? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. The only way to go is to divide the troops and lure the enemy. So Chen Chen decisively spoke up and said to Peng Diren beside him, Boss Peng, where are your assassins? Which group are they from? Peng Diren was stunned for a moment and replied, It's one group. Let them move forward quickly to the west, make a feint to attract the enemy, and keep them where they are. Do you want to use it now? Peng Diren was a little hesitant. In fact, no matter how weak a warlord is, as long as he has a certain amount of military power, he can raise a group of loyal soldiers. These people may not have strong fighting qualities or strong guarding abilities, but they must be extremely loyal and willing to die for their masters. Peng Diren himself has such a team, consisting of no more than 10 people, who are his most trusted confidants. He was indeed ready for the entire team to sacrifice, but now? Hasn't the battle just begun? Hearing Peng Diren's question, Chen Chen had no desire to answer him at all, but said directly, I am in command now. You have no right to question the order. After the fight, you can ask whatever you want, but not now. Clear. Peng Diren answered decisively that he was not an unreasonable bumpkin. He was a warlord. He was a warlord. Even if he didn't know how to fight, he could understand the rules of war. So he decisively ordered a group of death warriors to move forward immediately. Just 2 minutes later, dense gunfire began to sound. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin He completed an extremely risky close-range reconnaissance, determined the distribution range of the local teams, and planned the route for subsequent troops. Go 50 meters west, then 100 meters north, then 300 meters northwest, and go 200 meters along the Afong Valley, and you will reach the Salween River. The team set off immediately and completed the earliest section of the breakout route in just 3 minutes. Reports from the leader of Group 1 continued to come over the radio. The enemy's firepower is very strong. What light machine guns they have? We can't hold on. Get ready to throw smoke bombs. Sir, have you passed the danger zone? At this time, Chen Chen led the team through the defense line blocked by this group of enemies and advanced westwards towards the Salween River. The enemy and allied forces were parallel to the Salween River in the north-south direction. In theory, they had indeed passed the danger zone. But the problem is that on the battlefield, every penny counts. There is absolutely no room for leniency. A merciful army is not suitable for commanding troops. Letting Group 1 retreat now will increase the risk of the main force being surrounded. Chen Chen frowned and was silent for 2 seconds. He then said, No, the situation is tense. Keep holding on. Surrender is allowed, but only after all the bullets are used up. Clear. Commander Peng, goodbye. The captain of Group 1 gave a brief reply, and then gunshots rang out again. Surrender. This is your last chance. But can they hold on until they surrender? Peng Diren's expression was somewhat painful, but he didn't say a word. The team continued to move forward, and in less than 15 minutes, the team of 100 people had been reduced to only 75 people. The enemy was getting closer and closer, but their speed was always a step behind that of the Allied forces. This is the power of tactics. Even if two teams have almost the same combat quality, a gap of one line can be created. And many times, this slight difference can determine life or death. The terrain of the valley was flat, and the team sprinted at full speed for the last 200 meters. Number 1, place broadsword mines in the middle of the valley. How many are left? 4 shots. That's enough. Throw smoke bombs to block the valley, and then take turns to cover the retreat. We need to cross the river quickly without cover. Clear. After a brief communication, the team crossed the valley. In the smoke, the unique dull sound of the broadsword mine explosion was heard, followed by painful cries that spread throughout the valley. The Salween River, or Nujung River, is right before our eyes. Chen Chen quickly scanned the surface of the river and found the shallows slightly to the north that was most suitable for crossing the river. The width of the river is no more than 100 meters, and if all crew members are proficient in swimming, it will only take 3 to 4 minutes at most. That's enough. Is there anyone who can't swim? Those who can't swim stay on the riverbank to provide cover, and the rest of you jump into the water and cross the river immediately. On the other side, near Afong Mountain, inside the temporary command post of the Border Defense Battalion. Listening to the battle reports coming from the front line, Wei Huairan's face showed a mixture of joy and confusion. To his delight, almost all the news he heard was about victory. Except for the initial counterattack, in which the Allied forces caused more than a dozen casualties. In the subsequent jungle chases and encirclements, the Border Defense Battalion won a great victory in almost every conflict. At least 20 people had been killed, and according to detailed intelligence from the front, one of the groups was Peng Diren's most loyal soldiers. In order to delay their pursuit, they even charged their own troops with daggers in hand when they ran out of ammunition and food. This action scared the combat team responsible for the encirclement, but it was just a shock. Even in the dense jungle, there is no doubt that modern weapons can suppress cold weapons. The only 4 survivors were all killed in a round of light machine gun fire. They didn't even have time to say a single word of their last words. This result made Wei Huairan very satisfied. When fighting, you must be ruthless and show no mercy, and not have the slightest bit of compassion. Just as he said at the beginning, since Peng Diren was already doomed to die, why should he hold back? Now his personal soldiers have been killed by himself, which means that he may have really reached the end of his rope. Their group was fleeing towards the Salween River, no doubt trying to cross the river to survive. But the question is, if you can cross the river, why can't we? The other side of the river is not in the north, but still in Myanmar. If you want to cross the border, you have to trek through the jungle for at least 10 kilometers. How can we not catch up with you at such a long distance? A smile appeared on Wei Huairan's face. He had almost predicted Peng Diren's ending. However, just as he was planning the next encirclement plan on the map and was about to start mobilizing heavy firepower, his adjutant suddenly broke in. Battalion Commander, the rebels have reached the Salween River. They have laid mines, and our pursuit force has been blocked. We are still several hundred meters away from them, but we'll catch up soon. Are they really going to cross the river? Wei Huairan asked with a frown. In his opinion, this was a strategy that could not be any dumber because the west bank of the Salween River was completely different from the east bank. There was an open area with sparse vegetation over there. Once they crossed the river, their own rockets and long-range weapons could completely cover them. Do you really think that everyone on your side is stupid? Do you really think that your troops can't catch up with them? Looking at Wei Huairan's expression, the adjutant immediately replied, "Yes, we are sure to cross the river." The 6th Company encountered sporadic attacks on the shore. They must have been the defeated soldiers they left behind. The other side surrendered very quickly. I felt that their morale was about to collapse. That's normal. With more than 1,000 people surrounding more than 100 people, it would be strange if their morale didn't collapse. Do you really think that you guys are from the north and can easily perform miracles of defeating the enemy with fewer people? Don't be ridiculous. After all, you are just locals born and raised here. The overall situation is already decided. Wei Huairan let out a long sigh and gave the order. 2nd and 3rd Companies move to the riverbank. The Artillery Company moves its position to the ridge and prepare 107 fire. Companies 1 and 4 search the mountains along the Afong Ridge toward the riverbank to prevent them from making a feint to the east and attacking from the west, hiding Peng Diren in the mountains. 5th Company continues to stand guard outside the headquarters. 6th Company splits up its forces and moves across the river. Regardless of casualties, kill them. The west bank of the Salween River. All the Allied soldiers who could swim had completed the crossing, which took a total of 4 minutes. After reaching the shore, they did not stop and immediately continued to run westward, hiding in the sparse jungle on the west bank of the river. At this time, the pursuing enemy had reached the riverbank. Through the night vision binoculars, Chen Chen nervously watched the dispatch situation on the opposite side and listened to Bao Chi's radio interception report. Then he found that Wei Huairan's tactical arrangement could really be described as stable. He did not push all the troops to the riverbank. Instead, he mobilized 2 companies to advance in echelons to provide cover, while the vanguard troops were preparing to force a crossing of the river in pursuit. At the same time, on the distant hill, the artillery company had completed the transfer and reset up the 107 rocket launcher on the ridge, aiming at the direction of the riverbank. With this arrangement, the enemy has completely suppressed all of our escape routes. If they continued to move westward, they would use rocket launchers to bombard the ground, slowing down their speed and making it easier for the vanguard troops crossing the river to pursue them. If they choose to defend the riverbank, the other 2 companies that arrive can provide timely support to the vanguard troops and completely crush them with firepower. If they fled in any direction along the river, north or south, whether it was the vanguard troops that crossed the Salween River and were closer to the north, or the support companies that stayed on the east bank and were closer to the south, they could continue to pursue them along the river and then completely kill them in one small-scale conflict after another. An impeccable tactic with almost no loopholes to exploit. Our only chance was to destroy all the vanguard troops crossing the river in a very short period of time, and then go north along the river and escape to the north. But in doing so, their side would inevitably expose their target and face the risk of being hit by rockets. There is no perfect strategy, only relatively feasible strategies. Chen Chen frowned, and he quickly calculated the distance to the enemy and the speed at which the enemy's troops were mobilizing in his mind, trying to find a gap through which he could slip through. The two support companies were at least 10 minutes away from the river. The vanguard troops had already set up fire points on the riverbank. They would launch a forced crossing within 2 minutes at most, and under the cover of firepower, they would be able to complete the crossing in 4 minutes at most. 6 minutes. This means that there is a 4-minute time difference between the vanguard troops and the support troops. This 4-minute time difference is our chance. Chen Chen's eyes lit up, and he already had a strategy in mind. So he immediately turned to Pengdiren, but before he could speak, the latter spoke first. Commander Chen, the team is failing. The team is failing? What do you mean? Chen Chen was confused and angry. He had already guessed what Pengdiren meant by no more. The team is disbanding. After being forced to use Pengdiren's personal soldiers to delay the enemy, the morale of the allied forces was gone. They will never understand what sacrifice means, what blocking the enemy step by step means, and even less what Chorwan tactics means. They are not the original army that divided more than 9,000 people into more than 200 small positions, relying on a desperate tactic of dozens of people in each position, emptying each position one by one, and destroying each organization one by one to block up to 100,000 enemy troops. They're just a mob that will immediately feel fear and immediately plan to give up after seeing their teammates die in battle. There is no way around it. This is a fundamental gap. Even though Chen Chen had made preparations in advance, he was still extremely angry when faced with such a situation. After hearing Chen Chen's questioning, Pengdiren couldn't help but want to back out. He had a vague feeling that the man in front of him was an enraged lion who would not only tear the enemy to pieces, but he was also just a weak vassal in front of him. After calming himself down a little, Pengdiren answered, "Some people are leaving, starting with the 5th group, up to the 10th group, they all have to leave. They want to go north across the border. They don't want to fight anymore. Can they just not fight if they don't want to? Do they think Wei Huairan's border defense battalion will let them go? Or do they think that Wei Huairan can't catch up with them? The rocket launcher can't catch up with them?" Chen Chen's tone was cold, and Pengdiren quickly replied, "I've already said that, but that's enough." Chen Chen interrupted his explanation without hesitation. There was no need. Pengdiren had already lost most of his control over the team. In fact, the people who stayed behind probably did not stay because of his authority and leadership, but because they felt that they would be more likely to die if they went north. The Dongfeng Corps and the Allied forces have been completely separated, and Chen Chen's command system has begun to collapse. Now the only common goal for both sides is to survive. This is the most dangerous situation on the battlefield. The negative impact of disordered command is even more exaggerated than running out of ammunition and food. However, Chen Chen did not have any time to do any pre-war mobilization or ideological construction work. All he could do was to find a way to bring the team together again in this most extreme situation. So he immediately gave the order. "I will not stop anyone who wants to leave, but they must at least intercept the vanguard troops crossing the river before leaving. Otherwise, they would never be able to escape." "Understood. I'll go and notify them," Pengdiren replied, while Chen Chen began to order the communication channel to be switched, directly cutting off all contact with the deserter. The two sides officially entered the stage of fighting on their own, and they only had the last 2 minutes left to cooperate. As the machine guns of the vanguard firepower group on the other side of the river sounded, the enemy officially began to cross the river, and Chen Chen's side also fought back, firing dense bullets at the river surface. But compared to the wide river surface, this firepower was really insignificant. The enemy's crossing force had already advanced to the middle of the river, and their losses were only a few people. Chen Chen once again observed the movements of all enemy troops, and then he issued an order that was beyond everyone's expectations. Everyone advance 100 meters south along the jungle, and then cross the river eastward. We must enter the jungle on the east side before the 2 enemy support units reach the river beach. We have to go right past them. Pengdiren's eyes widened. How is this possible? He asked subconsciously. Nothing is impossible. There is a time difference between the enemy's vanguard and support troops. We can use this time difference to sneak across the river. They only have a small amount of night vision equipment, so it's almost impossible to catch us. And more importantly, aren't we heading north? Pengdiren was stunned. He never imagined that even the division of his own troops would be exploited by this man. He seized all available conditions on the battlefield just to pursue victory. Without any more doubts, Pengdiren decisively followed Chen Chen's footsteps. Afterwards, the only 2 remaining groups of more than 20 people began to advance rapidly southward. 2 minutes later, they arrived at the designated crossing point. Then, according to the time carefully calculated by Chen Chen, they all jumped into the water when the enemy's vanguard troops completed the crossing and began to chase the Allied soldiers fleeing northward. To their north, rockets began to fall intensively, and the flames illuminated the panicked figures. Pengdiren suddenly felt a little sad. He didn't understand. The only chance to survive was right in front of him. So why couldn't these people figure it out? There was no time for unnecessary mourning. The team reached the east bank of the Salween River again 3 minutes later. Then, everyone went ashore along the shallows and, with the help of the lower riverbank for cover, they re-entered the jungle at an angle that made it almost impossible to be discovered. They had crossed the river from this jungle 10 minutes ago, and now, they're back in the jungle. It seemed that nothing had changed, but in fact everything had changed because the 2 companies that came to support them just pushed past them. They did not notice their own whereabouts, because their attention was completely attracted by the split team, and they passed by. This is a missed opportunity due to time difference. What now? Pengdiren asked. He knew that the defense line still blocking his front was already extremely weak. If he could attack it in one go, he might be able to break through the siege. Yes, the remaining combat power of his side was extremely weak, but how could he know if it would work if he didn't give it a try? Let's fight. A tremendous desire to fight arose in his heart, but he had no idea who to attack or in which direction to attack. Beside him, Chen Chen did not answer his question at all, but just listened carefully to Bao Qi's interception report. 2 companies are searching down along the ridge. If we withdraw directly to the south, we will probably run into them directly. We have a chance to penetrate, but once the gunfire starts, the 2 companies will quickly shrink and hold us back, and Wei Huiran's reserve company can also provide support immediately. We're gonna get bit. We don't have vehicles, but they do. Then don't break through to the south. Where is the enemy's artillery company? On the top of the mountain, the position should be on this line. Where is the enemy's command post? Where is Wei Huiran? Here, Taman village. With the help of the dim flashlight, Chen Chen, who was lurking in the jungle, could clearly see the location of the artillery position and the location of the outer command post. There was a gap of nearly 300 meters between the artillery position and the 2 mountain search companies. Moreover, from the high ground where the artillery position is located, it should be possible to directly see the command post at a lower horizontal position. It's stable. Chen Chen let out a long breath, then said, "We assaulted the enemy's artillery battery. They must not have much of a defense, since all the light infantry has been sent out. It's 600 meters away and can be reached in about 10 minutes. According to the speed of the mountain search team, we can pass through the gap. All team leaders report. How many smoke bombs are left? 4. 6 rounds. I have 8 rounds here. Give us all the smoke bombs. Number 1, keep 4 and throw out the rest. Number 5 leads the way. Number 1, you will be the breacher. Throw the stun grenade and rush into the position to establish the initial firing point. Number 3, find the right angle to take down the high-value target. Number 2, number 6, get ready to operate the artillery. You must cooperate with me and aim and load the rockets as quickly as possible. Clear." All the members of the Dongfeng Corps answered in unison, and the leaders of the 2 allied forces groups asked subconsciously, "What about us? Just follow them. Don't point your guns at your own people." Chen Chen did not waste time making more detailed arrangements for these soldiers, because he knew that with the quality of these people, all arrangements would be impossible to execute. It would be better to keep it simple and just follow. So after the order was clear, the team immediately started to move forward. Relying on the advantages of infrared night vision and radio eavesdropping, the 20 people narrowly avoided the mountain search team and went straight to the heart of the enemy's front line. Peng Diren's heart began to beat violently. Perhaps his soldiers could not see the overall situation clearly, but he fully understood how bold and risky this strategy was. Because this is equivalent to placing this team of only 24 people completely surrounded by the enemy. Are you kidding? We just escaped from the encirclement, and now we are stepping into the encirclement again? What exactly has changed? What is different? Yes, the only thing that has changed is the relative position of our side and the artillery position. All the previous infiltration operations and cruel tactics had only one goal, which was to shorten the distance with the artillery positions. As long as they take down this artillery position and seize the heavy weapons that the enemy has not yet used, the team's chance of winning will be greatly improved. They plan and strategize just for this winning blow. At this moment, Peng Diren finally felt the charm of tactics. At this time, the enemy's artillery position was right in front of them. The assault happened unexpectedly. When the distance was shortened to about 50 meters, the leaders Lin He and Li Bang began to throw smoke bombs and grenades continuously. Under the cover of explosives, the other 4 fighters of the Dongfeng Corps launched attacks from 2 directions respectively. There was a flash of gunfire, and the enemies in the position had no time to react. They don't even have guns in their hands because they are just artillerymen, and their hands are used to operate rocket launchers. There were no more than 20 guards, but these 20 enemies had no ability to resist at all in the face of the Dongfeng Corps' powerful and accurate firepower. Peng Diren even saw that the man named Number 1 withstood the gunfire of a Type 81 rifle and used the shotgun in his hand to blow up the enemy's head. His body just staggered for a moment, and then he started moving and hiding quickly and flexibly again. The allied squad following behind was very late, and when they entered the battlefield, the only task left for them was to clear out the remaining defenseless artillery. The battle started suddenly and ended suddenly. The whole process didn't even take more than 2 minutes. Peng Diren's heart rate had reached its limit, and he felt dizzy like never before. However, Chen Chen did not give him any time to breathe, because he has already started debugging those rocket launchers. Don't just stand there. Group 4, on alert. Group 2, move the shells. Wei Huiran hasn't reacted yet. It's time to treat him to some midnight snack. Where's the artillery company? Where's my artillery company? Contact them. Why did the rocket launcher stop? Those people have already run far away. We have to keep chasing them. Please pick me up. What the hell is he doing? In the temporary command post in Taman village, Wei Huiran shouted hysterically, while his adjutant stood trembling beside him and answered, "We just lost contact with the artillery battery. They're under fire." "Oh, that's right. He said there weren't many people. It shouldn't be a problem. The artillery company has more than 100 people and 4 light machine guns. There are at least 50 or 60 rebels in the west. Based on the numbers, the number of people attacking the artillery battalion is at most a dozen. These dozen people can't cause any waves. Their purpose is only to harass. They should be trying to buy time for the rebels who want to escape to the north, but it's meaningless. We can definitely catch up with them. It probably won't be long before we can get back in touch. NQO should be calling right now." Hearing the adjutant's words, Wei Huiran breathed a sigh of relief. That's right, there are only a dozen people on the allied side. How could they possibly make any noise? Even if they could create short-term chaos, the surrounding mountain-searching troops would quickly provide support and then crush them all to death. This was just their last-ditch struggle, and from any perspective, I shouldn't worry about it. However, on the other hand, Peng Diren was really a good fighter. In this situation where he was surrounded by thousands of people, he was able to design such a sophisticated strategy. On one hand, he led a large force to escape, and on the other hand, he left a small force to harass. If his tactics were successful, he might have been able to get away this time. Unfortunately, he had too few men, so few that his tactics could not make up for the difference in numbers and firepower. If their number was not 100 but 500, or even just 200, we probably wouldn't be able to fight so smoothly. This person really should die earlier. No need to worry about relatives or balance of power. As long as he is your enemy, he must die. Thinking of this, Wei Huairen sighed deeply. After all, the eldest brother is old. He may have forgotten how he conquered his own empire and still thinks he can get everything simply by relying on political means. But in fact, in this land, if you want to be big and achieve something, you have to fight. Without military power, what can you fight for? What can you grab? This border defense camp must be firmly grasped in your own hands. Ong Tingling must die, and Peng Diren must die too. Wei Huairen's expression became somewhat gloomy, and after a brief pause, he gave the order. Order the 5th Company to move closer to me. Since they deployed a team, it's impossible that there is only one. The number is wrong. I suspect they may attack our headquarters. A lion will do its best to fight a rabbit, so we must guard against sneak attacks. Keep them out and let them know what it means to be a good person. However, he didn't have time to finish his words. Just as he was about to blurt out the last word, a sudden sharp scream interrupted him. Wei Huairen stopped talking in confusion. He subconsciously walked out of the house. Then, a scene that he was very familiar with, but had never seen from such an angle, suddenly appeared in front of him. A rain of fire pouring down from the sky. Wei Huairen's eyes were bloodshot. Damn it! My bazooka! Distance: 300 meters. Number 1. Advance quickly and throw smoke bombs. Number 3. Occupy the commanding heights, find a sniper position, move at any time, and don't get caught. Number 2. Number 5. Cover number 3, and be on alert at all times. Number 6. Follow me and charge. Group 2. Follow up. Outside Taman village, Chen Chen quickly issued his last order. Just now, after completing the first round of rocket launches, he left a team to continue the subsequent launches and then led all members of the Dongfeng Corps to launch an assault on Taman village. The rocket launcher, or artillery position, was only 1 kilometer away from the Taman village command. The terrain was flat, and there was even a country road connecting them. It only took them about 5 minutes to complete the advance. When they arrived at the outskirts of Taman village had completely turned into a sea of fire. The company left behind here had no time to react. They gathered together because of Wei Huairen's wrong order and inexplicably suffered the greatest casualties. This also led to the fact that after a round of rocket attacks, the entire command center was almost wiped out. There were no more than 70 people still standing, and among these 70 people, at least half were fleeing frantically and desperately. All defenses have collapsed and retreat becomes the only option. The 13-man team led by Chen Chen was like a tiger among a flock of sheep. Even the allied soldiers, whose combat effectiveness was frighteningly low, began to shoot and reap the lives of the enemy. Li Bang had already thrown the smoke bomb. In the actual combat, his understanding of projectiles had made a qualitative leap. This time, when the number of projectiles was limited and the area to be blocked was too wide, he suddenly realized the truth just like Shi Dakai in the Battle of Naong Village. Of course, this kind of enlightenment was not so mysterious. He just quickly observed the situation on the battlefield, and then threw a crucial smoke bomb at several particularly critical traffic points. The entire battlefield was divided in an instant, and all the enemy's crossfire was broken in an instant. The Dongfeng Corps was completely unaffected. With the help of thermal imagers, they could easily penetrate the thick smoke and find the enemy's traces even when there were interference from flames and heat sources everywhere. Chen Chen, Li Bang, and Bai Go gathered together and formed a combat team according to the principle of 3-3. As the main shooter, Chen Chen switched the 416 Hong Kong dollars to the continuous fire mode, and each of his short bursts of fire would surely take the life of an enemy. It took no more than 3 minutes from the start of the assault to the time the 3 men entered the center of Mana Village. But in just these 3 minutes, no less than 10 enemies fell before them. At the same time, Shi Dakai, who stayed behind them, also fired frequently. The .50 bullets penetrated the fragile bunkers in the village again and again, blasting huge bloody holes in the bodies of the enemies behind the bunkers. The enemies in Manta village completely collapsed, and their last will to resist was completely shattered. At this moment, Bao Qi's call suddenly came from Chen Chen's headphones. Wei Huairen is still in the command post in the center of the village. He hasn't run away yet. There are 3 enemies, and we can see them from our position. Bang. Before Bao Qi could finish his words, the sound of gunfire from the M82A1 rang out again. Then came the second shot and the third shot. A strong sense of security suddenly arose in Chen Chen's heart because he knew that Shi Dake's shots were aimed at Wei Huairen's command post. The combat effectiveness of his team was fully demonstrated. After the intelligence was clear, Shi Dakai automatically chose the most reasonable, safest, and most efficient means without even needing his own instructions. Nonsense. If you can see it directly, why not shoot it to death? This is the real cooperation. This is the real grasp of the opportunity. He did not hesitate and continued to move forward to the command post according to Bao Qi's instructions. When they arrived, 2 broken bodies had fallen behind the wall of the command post. There is no Wei Huairen. Stun bomb. Chen Chen gave a brief order, and Li Bang fired a stun grenade without hesitation. Then, the three of them rushed into the small building almost in time with the explosion of the stun grenade. At this time, Chen Chen finally saw the big hole on the side of the wall. Behind the big hole was Wei Huiren, who was lying on the ground but still struggling. You are the one who is the best. Bang! Chen Chen's 416 Hong Kong dollars opened fire without hesitation, and he did not give Wei Huiren a chance to leave any last words. Safety! Safety! Li Bang and Bai Go, who had finished searching the house, answered one after another, while Chen Chen walked to the table in the house and picked up the microphone of the radio, which was still receiving calls from other troops. He exhaled lightly, and then said, Wei Huiren has been shot dead by me. All the guards were killed. Everyone put down your weapons immediately. Otherwise, I will beat you to death. The question: how did you capture 1,000 people with less than 20 people? The answer is actually very simple. That is, control the heavy firepower and deprive the command. The main force of Wei Huiren's Border Defense Battalion is actually a mountain combat brigade of the northeast military region of the Myanmar army. They have heavy weapons, but they do not have the ability to carry heavy weapons for rapid combat. Most of the time, they set up artillery positions in places accessible by roads, just like Wei Huiren's command, and then sent light infantry forward to search and fight under the cover of artillery fire. This tactic has a major flaw, that is, the heavy firepower is basically concentrated in the rear. Once the rear is attacked, the army will basically collapse, because light infantry can never fight against heavy firepower positions. Even in the Korean War, when the king of light infantry was born, our army rarely used light infantry to charge and capture enemy positions. Most of the time, it is done with the help of grenade launchers, rockets, or artillery fire from the rear. Because this is an objective law and cannot be changed by personal will. And now here comes a problem. The firepower configuration of this border defense battalion was extremely distorted. The light infantry charging in the front had few rocket launchers, let alone grenades. This meant that after taking control of the only remaining heavy firepower near the command post, the Dongfeng Corps squad became the firepower center within a few kilometers. After issuing the surrender notice, Chen Chen immediately picked up the intercom and ordered the team left behind on the hillside. Everyone, blow up the rocket launcher positions immediately and then move towards me. You have 5 minutes, maneuver quickly. Then he turned to Bao Qi and said, keep listening. As soon as the other party changes the communication channel, immediately use the radio to occupy their channel. They probably don't have a frequency hopping communication system, so don't let their various companies establish contact with each other. Clear. Bao Qi answered immediately. At the same time, Shi Dukai, who had just arrived, also began to act quickly. He took over Chen Chen's frontline command responsibilities and began to guide all the allied soldiers who were still able to fight to occupy the heavy machine guns and mountain howitzer positions. The number of these heavy weapons is not large, 6 heavy machine guns and 2 M63s, which are relatively shabby configurations in the so-called Mountain Combat Battalion. But even with all this equipment, the Dongfeng Corps cannot use up all of it. Now it's time to see the real action. This Border Defense Battalion must be defeated in one fell swoop, and the advantage we have already gained must not be given up. Even if we have fewer people, we must fight them. Otherwise, once the enemy recaptures the command post and their various companies re-establish contact, even if they are weak, there will definitely be an adjutant who will step forward to command and rally this team that is on the verge of collapse. By then, all your efforts will be in vain. Peng Diren, who was standing by, was a little stunned when he saw Chen Chen's arrangement. He subconsciously asked, we have a car here, and it can be driven. Why don't we run? Run? Where can you run to? Chen Chen shook his head and replied, this is your only chance. As long as you can really stand firm, you'll have the capital to negotiate with the other party. This time, Wei Charan dared to hunt you down so openly and at all costs. In fact, the situation is very clear. They don't care that much about Ong Tingling's life or death. If the situation allows, they certainly hope to keep Ong Tingling alive, but if not, it doesn't matter if he dies. So, we need new chips. And this bargaining chip is the border defense camp. We must capture them all, and then use this reorganized border defense battalion to negotiate with the Burmese side and by swatching. Very clear thinking and very logical. However, the only logical process is the process of inference. The process of achieving this is not logical at all. 100 people against at least 1,200 people. It is a miracle among miracles to be able to take down the headquarters. Now you tell me, not only do you not want to run away, but you also want to fight another battle with the remaining 1,000 people who are obviously not collapsed yet? Are you crazy, or am I crazy? Peng Diren stared at Chen Chen in amazement, but the expression on the latter's face was extremely firm, and it cannot be questioned. Don't talk nonsense here. There are a total of 6 heavy machine guns. Each heavy machine gun and the bunker are enough to cover one direction of the enemy. The Burmese's fighting spirit is not as strong as you think. If a group of them die, they will collapse on their own. And the most important thing is that they don't know whether Wei Huiren is dead or not, so the other companies will definitely rush back as quickly as possible to confirm the situation. We can't let them gather out of sight. We have to separate them completely. After a pause, Chen Chen said, we need a catfish. Or rather, a sheepdog. Number 1, get the car ready. They have a machine gun jeep. I will charge with you, along the mountain road towards Afong Mountain. We're going to scare them and cut them apart. Clear. Li Bang didn't hesitate at all, but Peng Diren's eyes widened in shock again. You two are going to divide the battlefield? Commander Chen, you are the commander. There is no one else available. Shi Dukai and Bao Qi are both injured and cannot perform high-intensity maneuvers. Linny has no combat experience. Bai Go needs to operate the M63. I can only do it by myself. Stop talking nonsense and get going. At the command, everyone took action immediately. The entire Taman village had been completely cleared, and the remaining 8 allied soldiers who had just rushed back happened to run to the entrance of the village. They watched helplessly as an armored jeep roared out like a wild beast that had escaped from its cage, and then rushed in the completely opposite direction of them. At this moment, every one of them was heart beating and shaken, because they knew that these 2 people were not going to die. They were going to kill the enemy. Moreover, they can really kill, and they can kill a lot of them. Sir, do you need me? Someone in the team suddenly shouted loudly. Everyone's eyes fell on the person who was shouting. The jeep braked to a stop, and then Chen Chen said, "What kind of gun do you have?" "PCAM, get in the car." The man climbed onto the car without hesitation, then got into the jeep, stuck his tripod outside the window, half-crouched in the gap between the seats, and used his legs to support the seats to form a stable shooting posture. Quite interesting. Chen Chen couldn't help but nodded, and after a brief pause, the jeep continued to move forward. In less than 2 minutes, they had reached the vicinity of the artillery position, and it was here that Chen Chen's infrared imaging night vision goggles captured the first large-scale enemy activities. "Beat!" He gave the order without hesitation, and then Li Bang suddenly turned the car around to get out of the PKM's firing range. Light and heavy machine guns opened fire at the same time, sending wood chips flying among the trees. Cries of pain continued to ring out, mixed with the explosions of blind firing. The jeep returned along the same mountain road it had come from, and then turned back again after reaching a wide U-turn point. Charged left and right, bullets reaped the exposed lives like a chainsaw, and this jeep became the iron cavalry charging into the battle. There is no one who can stop it because it is a wolf, and its enemies in the jungle are the sheep. In just 3 minutes, the jeep had charged twice, and the light and heavy machine guns had used up their first ammunition belts. While they were changing ammunition, the Type 81 rifle that Li Bang placed on the passenger seat also began to fire rapidly. He was still splashing water without any accuracy, but his suppressive power was not that of a combat team. Without even having the chance to enter the artillery position, the returning company began to retreat. The jeep chased them all the way along the mountain road, forcing them to the south, leaving a distance of several hundred meters between them and the 2 teams retreating from the riverbank. In the jungle, when communications are completely cut off, this distance is an insurmountable barrier. The hope of coordinated operations was completely shattered, and now there was only one last way left for them. Attack the command post. "Withdraw!" Chen Chen shouted loudly. "Number 6, prepare to fire. The troops on the riverbank are almost reaching the ridgeline. Don't let them get close to the artillery positions. Don't let them establish a rally point. Understand. I have 2 cannons, so my accuracy is not guaranteed. Just aim and shoot." As soon as he finished speaking, there was a loud bang, and the mountain howitzer shells exploded near the artillery position. The accuracy is really shockingly poor, but what does it matter? The place where the shells fell is a restricted area for the retreating troops. "Return to the command post." Chen Chen continued to shout. In fact, there was no need for his command. Li Bang was already driving the jeep back. After 2 minutes of racing, they returned to Taman village again. At the same time, the 2 mountain search companies that they had driven southward finally walked out of the jungle and appeared in their sight. The 2 sides fell into a brief standoff. Chen Chen let out a long sigh, then said, "Fire short bursts with the heavy machine gun. Don't shoot at people. Don't kill anybody. Keep them close. Number 1, go operate the heavy machine gun on the vehicle. What's your name for this one? Go operate the other one in the southeast corner. Remember, the 2 of you must not shoot at random. Wait for my order." "Sir, my name is Ning Ming." "Got it." The 2 men got out of the car quickly, while Chen Chen set up the 416 Hong Kong dollars and aimed at the enemy on the hillside. There are about 2 companies with a total of about 300 people. From my own perspective, it can be said to be very densely packed. The pressure is at its maximum. Maybe they feel so themselves, because they did not stay too long, but immediately launched a charge after seeing the layout near the command post clearly. The distance of about 600 meters only takes 5 minutes at most. The sound of bursts of heavy machine gun fire rang out, and the opponent's fire suppression also began. The dense rain of bullets made it almost impossible for the heavy machine gun to raise its head. If this continued, the enemy might really advance to a close distance. However, the difference between heavy firepower and light firepower was really not so easy to draw. Seeing that the enemy's charging force had entered the 300-meter range, Chen Chen shouted, "Number 1, Ning Ming, start fighting. Suppress the enemy's rear covering fire. Number 6, turn the gun around. Bomb him. Number 3, find the enemy machine gunners and silence them. Clear." 2 heavy machine guns hidden in the dark opened fire. The M63 roared and fired a direct shot, and the M82A1 penetrated a machine gunner lying on the ground. The situation changed in a split second. The enemy's covering fire was silenced, even if only for a moment. However, the 4 heavy machine guns that were originally suppressed successfully entered full fire mode. Enemies began to fall in droves. No body was left intact in the barrage of bullets. "Captain Chen, we have 2 more fuel air explosives. Do you want to use them?" Peng Diren, who was also firing a light machine gun, asked, and Chen Chen immediately replied, "No, the fuel air explosive bombs are reserved for the companies on the riverbank." As the words fell, the company on the riverbank came into sight. It is on the other side far away from the mountain search company. Fuibom. Chen Chen didn't need to say anything more. Lin He and Bao Qi immediately picked up the fuel air bombs and opened fire. The raging flames covered everything. The enemy's action stagnated, and all enemies began to retreat subconsciously. They have to reorganize their attack. This will take time, maybe 2 minutes, maybe longer. And this is enough, because the first batch of 300 people had completely collapsed in these 2 minutes. They watched helplessly as their comrades fell one after another, and the bullets they fired couldn't even touch the enemy's clothes. Is there any battle more difficult than this? Those enemies of mine, those 20 or so allied forces, they really weren't kidding when they said they were going to kill me. The formation immediately began to get chaotic, and at this moment, Chen Chen rushed back to the command room, picked up the radio, and switched to the channel monitored by Bao Qi, and sent out a crucial message. Friends from both the north and south, listen up. Whoever surrenders first can join us. As long as someone shoots at the other side first, we will immediately provide fire support. If you want to run, we will catch up. Don't challenge our heavy machine gun positions. Do I need to tell you how to survive? The news got out and it took effect immediately. After just a few seconds, the enemy, whose mentality had completely collapsed, turned his gun around. Afterwards, Chen Chen ordered 3 heavy machine guns to turn around and shoot at the company rushing back from the riverbank. Peng Diren turned the gun around with trembling hands. His mood at this moment could no longer be described as excited. Time difference, another time difference. Taking advantage of the time difference between the arrival of the 2 separated enemy troops, Chen Chen fought a defensive battle with the maximum advantage. It turns out that tactical infiltration is not just about geographical location, but also about time. The first batch of enemies have surrendered, so will the outcome still be suspenseful? As an M63 shell exploded on the ridge, all the bullets fired at the command post suddenly stopped. Then, the voice of the enemy commander was heard from the radio, which had ended its channel occupation. We surrender. We surrender. How many people are there in total? Looking at the surrendered enemy soldiers who had just laid down their weapons and raised their hands in the same direction to reach the open space near the command post, Chen Chen asked. There are less than 200 people left, and they are all here. We probably didn't kill that many people. At least 600 or 700 people escaped. They probably won't come back. The commander is dead, so there's no reason for them to fight anymore. We really won. We actually won? Peng Diren's voice was hoarse, and he felt as if he had just experienced a wild dream. More than 20 people defeated a support force of less than 1,000 people and captured more than 200 people? What kind of record is this? Is it really possible for such a record to appear in the history of war? Although our side does have the advantage of heavy firepower, if I were to command it, I would probably not be able to achieve such an effect no matter what. No, it's not that I can't achieve such an effect, it's that I don't even dare to try. Now, looking at the dense crowd squatting on the ground, Peng Diren couldn't get rid of the sense of unreality in his heart. What should we do next? He asked. It's up to you. It's absolutely impossible to recruit them. These are Burmese troops. They can't join the Allied forces. So, the best way is to control it. Don't let your guard down. They surrendered because they thought we still had a large army. Now that they know we only have so few people, chaos will probably break out again soon. Think carefully about how to suppress them. This is your business. I have done what I should do. Hearing Chen Chen's words, Peng Diren immediately nodded and replied. I know. Actually, there's no need to worry too much. Having come this far, the chances of anything changing are slim. The most difficult step in surrendering is surrender. These soldiers have very low fighting spirit, and their sense of identity and loyalty are also very poor. As long as we make it clear to them that we're not going to use surgery on them and cut off their contact with the outside world, they will be able to settle down. Of course, the most important thing is that we have to make them understand that staying here until the dust settles is the best option. If they run away blindly like others, their superiors will not let them go. I will quickly contact other scattered troops and have them come to Hongyan for support. With such a big victory, I should be able to gather a lot of people. As expected, the people who know northern Myanmar best are the locals. What seemed like a very troublesome problem to Chen Chen was not worth mentioning at all to Peng Diren, because he knew better than anyone the quality of these so-called Myanmar Mountain Brigade soldiers, and he also knew what the best solution was under the current circumstances. It is not a matter of arbitrarily killing them all to eliminate future troubles, nor is it necessary to spend too much time killing people to establish authority. Instead, it is to rely on the weaknesses of this team and seize the opportunity of changes in the situation to seek the most powerful control. It must be said that he was somewhat gifted in this regard. Of course, if he did not have talent, he would not have been able to gather hundreds of people to cover the evacuation of the Peng family and even establish a base in Hongyan after Bai Suoqing completely defected and took away almost all the troops. Then I'll leave it to you. Chen Chen spoke. Remember the conditions you promised us. I will remind you on time. Of course, if these conditions are not fulfilled, you know. Hearing this, Peng Diren couldn't help but shudder. Not getting fulfilled? I'm afraid I'm crazy for not fulfilling it. If he can take out the Border Defense Battalion, can he take out himself? Either kill him now, or never think of becoming his enemy. Without a doubt, the latter is the option that maximizes benefits. Money is not a problem at all. The Peng family has been in business for many years, so they can come up with not only millions of dollars, but even tens of millions. But even tens of millions of dollars are nothing compared to this so-called Dongfeng Corps, because they represent a power that is unique in this land. Thinking of this, Peng Diren quickly said, I will arrange the transfer as soon as possible. There may be some delay, but not a cent less. This operation achieved an additional goal, and to show my sincerity, I will pay an additional $1 million. Commander Chen, I really appreciate your help. I hope I can have more opportunities to express this. Peng Diren said this very artistically, and Chen Chen immediately understood what he meant. Oh, to put it bluntly, don't you just want more support? You are making a lot of calculations, but why don't you look in the mirror and see what kind of person you are? Oh, Bai Suoqing is not a good person, but your Peng family is? Not to mention that there was no one behind Chen Chen. Even if there was someone, the Peng family would never have another chance to get on board. So, he simply did not answer Peng Diren's question, but walked straight to the temporary command post in the center of Taman village. There were countless pairs of eyes watching his movements. The defeated soldiers who were pinned to the ground never imagined that when they laid down their weapons and walked to Taman village to surrender, they would be facing less than 20 enemies. How did these 20 people defeat themselves? They couldn't figure it out, so they just stopped thinking about it. Now they really are just like what Peng Diren said. They just hope that things can be over quickly so that they can return to Lao Kai and Lashio. They watched Chen Chen walk into the room, and there was even a bit of unspeakable fear in their eyes. Compared to this man, Commander Peng Diren, who was once famous in Kokong, seemed extremely weak. Crouching in front of Wei Huairen's body and looking at Peng Diren who followed closely behind him, Chen Chen spoke again. Wei Huairen is dead, and Wei Chaoren will never let it go. The situation is very complicated right now. On one hand, Ong Tingling is missing and the border defense camp is defeated. On the other hand, Wei Huairen is killed in battle, and the balance of power among the four major families is broken. The undercurrent of Kokong will become more turbulent than ever before, and the attitudes of all parties towards Ming Xuechang will become more unpredictable. Tell me about your plan. If I don't think there's a chance it will work, then we might as well retreat now and go our separate ways. No need. Peng Diren immediately spoke up and replied, Commander Chen, it is exactly as you said. The current situation is very complicated. But a complex situation does not mean it is disadvantageous to us. On the contrary, the more complex and muddy the water is, the greater our security will be. The Wei family is the only family in the Ku army that is determined to control the military power. Unlike the militias of other families, the one they control is the official armed forces recognized by the Myanmar side. But now, this armed force has just arrived in their hands. Before it has even been warmed up, it has already been destroyed. This also means that the real backer of the Wei family, Suo Minwu, will face tremendous pressure. He must find a way to recover the losses as much as possible, and the way to recover the losses is to bring these prisoners back. At the same time, Ong Tingling's faction will also notice the problem. From the moment Wei Huairen launched the attack by any means necessary, the mountain struggle on the Burmese side was exposed, and Ong Tingling's situation became more dangerous. So, they have to resolve this issue as soon as possible to avoid more uncertainty. In summary, although the two factions of the Burmese army have opposing interests and different demands, for us, they will definitely reach a consensus on the matter of Ming Xuechang. This is our chance. Ming Xuechang will definitely be pulled out and sacrificed. There may be some twists and turns in this process, but we are not far from the result. Hearing Peng Diren's words, Chen Chen nodded slightly. Indeed, his analysis of the situation was as on point as ever. But the question is, what exactly does he mean by twists and turns? Let's get straight to the point. Chen Chen said, what else do we need to do to finally achieve this result? Kill Wei Chaoren, or continue to attack the people in Ong Tingling's faction? Neither. Peng Diren shook his head and replied, now all parties are still hesitating. We need to give them enough impetus. If we want them to make up their minds, Ming Xuechang must not be content. Ming Xuechang has rebelled. How could he possibly rebel? He's not a fool. For him, the best way now is to do nothing and wait a while. Chen Chen suddenly came to his senses. Wrong. Even Peng Diren could analyze such a situation, let alone Ming Xuechang. The moment Ong Tingling was captured and the border defense battalion led by Wei Huairen failed in its assault, he knew he was going to die. And since he was going to die, all he had to do was fight to the death. His nerves must be extremely tense, and even the slightest disturbance would cause him to react violently. What we need to do is to take advantage of such reactions. If you don't want to rebel, I will help you. However, such a conspiracy cannot be accomplished by force. What are you going to do? Chen Chen asked. It's too easy. We will hire a group of mercenaries outside of Kokong in the name of Ming Xuechang to protect his safety. Once outside forces are introduced, the situation will become very delicate. At the same time, we will release news saying, according to insiders, the police station bombing is related to the Myanmar military. We have been targeting Bai Suocheng and Ming Xuechang before, but now we are suddenly targeting Myanmar. Isn't this obvious? With a two-pronged approach, at least one of Ming Xuechang and the Burmese will be unable to hold back. But before that, we have to solve the most critical problem. Wei Chaoren's revenge. Chen Chen spoke. That's right. Peng Diren breathed a sigh of relief, nodded and continued. If mobilizing the border defense battalion to rescue Ong Tingling is a public matter, then avenging his brother is a private matter. We have more than 200 prisoners in our hands. We can't escape. We can only think of ways to defend and hold on until Ming Xuechang is sacrificed. We need the assistance of the Dongfeng Corps, so I'm afraid you will have to stay. We don't need to stay. Chen Chen shook his head and replied. Wei Chaoren is not as cautious as Ming Xuechang. He has been active in Henry Hotel all year round. Let's go directly to Kokong and see if there is any chance to kill him. At the same time, in a private room of Henry Hotel, sitting opposite Wei Chaoren were So Min U and Nyu Kin, two powerful figures in the Burmese army. The expressions on their faces were definitely not good. Wei Chaoren, in particular, could no longer suppress his pain and anger after contacting the defeated soldiers and learning that his brother was most likely killed by the so-called Allied forces. Looking at Su Minwu, the instigator of this action and the one who had sworn to him, as long as you kill Peng Diren, the border defense camp will be completely yours in the future. He felt extremely resentful, but he did not dare to show it. So he could only vent his emotions on their common enemy. I must get rid of Peng Diren, no matter what the cost, no matter if you want to participate or not. Generals, the rest is my own business. No matter how you persuade me, I will not change my attitude. Peng Diren must die. Even Jesus can't save him. As for the Secretary General's affairs, I'm sorry, I can't take care of that anymore. Hearing his words, Sun Minwu couldn't help but frown. He subconsciously glanced at Niu Qin and then advised, Boss Wei, don't be impulsive. The situation is still unclear. Even if you want to take any action, you have to wait until our troops come back. I've taken over the command. The company commanders have regrouped their troops and are heading towards Laojia. They don't have many cars, so the movement may be a little slower. But at least most people are back. This means that the situation is probably not as bad as you think. The Allied forces are most likely just bluffing. How could Wei Huiren be killed so easily? Isn't it rare to claim that the enemy commander is dead on the battlefield? Wei Chaoren was stunned for a moment, and then suddenly realized that what Su Minhua said was indeed a very logical speculation. That's right. No matter what, the Allied forces only had more than 100 people. According to previous battle reports, these more than 100 people were chased away in panic. How could they have the spare energy to raid their brother's headquarters? And how could they so incredibly take down the headquarters and kill the supreme commander? Yes, there is no truth in the mouths of defeated soldiers. They will inevitably exaggerate the enemy's strength and the casualties of friendly forces in order to evade their own responsibilities. What about dozens of people crossing the river, attacking artillery positions, and 20 people going straight to the command center? Fuck. Do you really think Peng Diren is from the north? Don't I know what kind of person he is? You might as well just say that Peng Diren, with a machine gun in each hand, killed all of you like Rambo in First Blood. Compared to 20 people killing 1,000 people, this sounds more convincing. Thinking of this, Wei Chaoren finally breathed a sigh of relief. Something must have gone wrong. According to the fleeing soldiers, their communications were interrupted for a long time, which seemed to be a sign of electronic interference. Perhaps Peng Diren mastered this new technical means from somewhere, and then used it to invade the border defense camp's communication channel, releasing the false news that the commander was killed in battle, which directly scared away these brainless border defense camp soldiers. Yes, that's logical. After all, even if his brother was really beaten and couldn't run away, he would find a way to ask for help from him. But he didn't, which meant that he either didn't need reinforcements or couldn't send a signal for help. Either situation is better than the current rumors. Wei Chaoren calmed down, nodded slightly, and replied, I understand. Then let's wait for those defeated soldiers to come back. But I'll only wait 24 hours. If I can't get any useful information from those defeated soldiers, I'll go to Hongyan myself. He is my brother after all. I want to see him alive or dead. Near the old street, Dashuatang village, 5 a.m. Chen Chen hid the machine gun jeep in a place where no one would ever find it. That is, near the monument to the fallen officers and soldiers in the anti-Japanese war near Dashuatang village. Afterwards, all 6 members of the Dongfeng Corps got off the car, leaving Lin He, Bao Qi, and Li Bang on guard, while the other 3 walked towards Laojia in casual clothes without carrying any weapons or equipment. Chen Chen's plan was very simple. He would enter the city from the west side of the old street and purchase equipment in the city. After finding Wei Chaoren's location, he would use the simplest, most common, and even most rustic equipment to kill Wei Chaoren. Once the assassination mission is completed, the assassination team will immediately return and evacuate along the original route. At the same time, the support team will immediately go to the Life Reconstruction Drug Rehabilitation Center northwest of Laojia, set up a defense line there, eliminate possible pursuers, and then escape with all the members of the assassination team. This may seem very risky, but in fact, given the current chaotic situation and the further tightening of security in the city, it is the safest and most effective option. After all, with Ong Tingling already in trouble and the border defense camp suffering a major defeat, even if the sentries wanted to make money, they would not dare to let armed men into the city at this time. If they carried guns, they might become the focus of attention. Therefore, disguising oneself as a civilian is the only reliable way to enter the city, and it is also a way that can be used for both attack and defense. If they find an opportunity, they will kill Wei Chaoren. If they don't find an opportunity, they can just come to the old street for breakfast and leave immediately after breakfast. At this time, they were only 2 kilometers away from the old street. With the help of the weak light, the 3 of them walked along the country road. The white dog who fell behind exhaled a little tiredly and said, Captain, I think our plan is still a bit risky. Wei Chaoren should be in a state of high alert right now. Even if he is not as vigilant as Ming Xuechong, he still has the basic security forces around him. If we want to kill him, we can either rely on long-range sniping or roadside bombs, but we have no guns or equipment now. Isn't it a bit too casual to just rush in like this? Hearing his words, Chen Chen shook his head and then explained, We are not saying that we must kill Wei Chaoren now. In fact, we are carrying out a combat reconnaissance mission. If there is a chance to fight, then do it directly. If there is no chance, then keep a low profile and scout. Don't worry, I'm not a fool. How can I take my life lightly? You've followed me so many times. When have I ever really risked my life? As soon as these words came out, Bai Go couldn't help but nod. Indeed, although his tactics as a team leader always reveal a sense of madness and wildness, in fact, this is just an appearance. The true core of a plan is always the most logical choice, selected after extremely precise calculations and meticulous considerations. It seems like a life or death situation, but in fact it is a sure thing. There is no need to question his decision, because he will always think one step, several steps, or even dozens of steps ahead of you. Bai Go felt relieved, and his tone became much more relaxed. Looking at the old street area that was already in front of him, he asked again, So what kind of equipment can we buy in the city? Guns are out of the question, so knives? Crossbows? Or powerful slingshots or something like that? Before Chen Chen could answer, Shi Dakai at the side spoke first. You need to be more open-minded. You don't necessarily have to use these things to kill people. And if you really use these things, it will be too easy to be traced. Gasoline, flour, firecrackers, and fireworks are more effective and safer when the opportunity is right. Didn't the captain teach us about making simple IEDs in class before? Did you forget the principle of dust explosion? But I can't think of it right now. Captain, are we going to use IEDs this time? Chen Chen shook his head again and replied. The situation is still unclear, so let's decide what option to choose. But one thing is certain, that is, we can only use the most common things in Laoji City. Why don't you treat this mission as a test? Think about what method you want to use first, and then verify your ideas and see if there are any problems after I announce the results. It's difficult. The white dog sighed and couldn't help but say, we are all mercenaries. How come you know so much more than me? Study hard, you still have a lot to learn. Chen Chen answered casually. At this time, the three had already reached the checkpoint on the west side of the old street. After a simple inspection and paying a $100 tip, the three entered the city very smoothly. Without any pause, they headed straight for the Henry Hotel, where Wei Chaoran was most likely to appear. This hotel was built as early as 2003. After several expansions and renovations, it has become one of the landmark buildings in the old street. There are many luxury cars in front of the hotel, and many people entering and leaving the hotel are of extraordinary appearance. You don't need to ask where these people come from. Countless wealth gathered here and disappeared at an alarming speed. And after the wealth dissipates, those once glamorous figures will quickly be reduced to dust. In the square in front of the hotel, there were many ragged people rummaging through trash cans for leftovers. It wasn't that they didn't have money for a meal, they just didn't want to waste even a penny on the chips. In the eyes of these people, even if they only have 20 yuan on them, there is still hope of making a comeback. Their humanity has been completely distorted. For a 100 yuan chip, they are willing to sell their bodies and their dignity. At the moment when the cards are turned over and the adrenaline is surging, the pleasure they get is even greater than that of drugs that have already become resistant. Just as Chen Chen and his two companions stopped outside the square to observe and wait, two down-and-out gamblers who were snatching a bottle of mineral water suddenly started fighting without warning. Their fight was completely beyond the scope of ordinary fights, because in just a dozen seconds, the eyeballs of one of them were gouged out. Blood was all over the floor. The security guards quickly stepped forward and took the two away. Baigo took a deep breath and said, the casino here is a little different from other casinos I've seen. Shidakai nodded slightly and replied, the gamblers here are even crazier. Very weird. Chen Chen was not surprised by their reaction, because neither Baigo nor Shudake really understood the inside story of the huge group run by Wei Chaoran. What is this? People die in casinos every day. Even the most terrifying rumors about northern Myanmar are not caused by so-called online fraud, but by the casino's water dungeon. Don't say it's 2010 now. As early as 2007, the rumor that Henry was put in the water dungeon after signing a bill at the Henry Hotel was already all over some social networking sites. I don't know how many lives have been taken here, and how many originally normal and harmonious families have been torn apart. Even if we look at it purely from this reason, Wei Chaoran really deserves to die. Thinking of this, Chen Chen said, Wei Chaoran has done more than just these dirty things. You think these gamblers are crazy? That's because you haven't seen anything crazier. You'll know when you go in. The dealers are not only selling chips, they're also selling mahjong. In the lounge, almost every table has people taking marijuana, and once they get high, they can do anything. The reason why this so-called hotel can maintain basic stability is because the Wei family has the Myanmar military behind it. They can use many tough measures without having to worry too much about attacks from a provincial department. Because if we want to fight him, we have to straighten out our diplomatic relations with Myanmar. It's very troublesome. If we let him continue to develop, his problems will become more and more serious in the future, and he may even become the real, invisible emperor of the four major families. By that time, it won't be so easy to deal with him. Having said this, Chen Chen paused, but he didn't stand a chance. I already know what to do. How? The white dog asked in a low voice. Chen Chen smiled and replied, I found that we have a misunderstanding. Do you remember what Xiaoyu said? Some things don't have to be solved by fighting or killing. We don't have to kill Wei Chaoran directly. We just need to make him lose the ability to retaliate. If we want to make him lose his ability to retaliate in a short period of time, this Henry Hotel is the best choice. I was wondering, the Henry Hotel has 32 floors. How long will it take to burn down? The white dog was stunned, while Shidakai said calmly, this type of casino hotel is the most flammable. As long as the open fire is not extinguished quickly, it will definitely burn out completely. But if you want to light a fire, fuel and evacuate personnel are both problems. There are still many innocent civilians here. We can't turn this into a terrorist attack. That's right. Chen Chen nodded slightly, then replied, fuel is a big issue. To burn down this whole building, we need a lot of fuel, or we need a relatively small amount of high-energy fuel. Let's go get some lithium batteries. There are plenty of electric donkeys in the old street. The structural design of this hotel is quite poor, and the fire will spread very quickly due to the chimney effect. Secondly, we have to get most people out of the hotel first. That means we have to make them see the danger, but there is no actual danger. Well, we'll start burning from the parking lot. Stunning beauty. Baigo stared at Chen Chen blankly and asked, what if, it's not burned? If it didn't burn, then it didn't burn. I was just trying it out. What's the big deal? As long as something happens, Wei Chaoran will definitely show up. If he shows up, won't it be easier for us to kill him? Got it, but how do we get the fuel in? We don't take it. Chen Chen shook his head and replied, why should we take the risk? There are so many gamblers at the door. If we make up a reason and give them some money, they will come to our aid. What we need to do now is to prepare a few explosive IEDs and then pack them in suitcases.